Good evening and welcome to the 554th meeting of the City of Laurel Planning Commission. Please note that if you wish to be heard at this meeting, please sign the speaker list provided on the table at the right side of the council chamber, and the chairman reserves the right to limit the amount of time each speaker has for each agenda item. We'll start with the roll call, Ms. Cullen.
Councilman Smalls?
Here.
Ms. Parker? Mr. Wilson?
Here.
Mr. Welford?
Here.
Vice Chairman Kish?
Here.
Chairwoman Bettman?
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Before I get started, I'd like to welcome many of those watching on television and also to acknowledge that we have a room full here in attendance. We have quite a large agenda this evening, and we're looking forward to the input from applicants as well as the community and those gathered. I would also like to note that Councilmember Fred Smalls, who is a part of our planning commission, is here. But in addition, joining us this evening are Ward 1 Council members Valerie Nicholas and Carl DeWalt, and also Ward 2 Council member Keith Sidnor. I'd like to welcome you. Some of these agenda items that you will hear tonight have been before the council, and you may have seen that. So with that, I'd like to move to agenda item 2, approval of the minutes from the November 14, 2017 meeting. We each received the minutes. Are there any questions of staff?
Madam Chair, I have on the second paragraph, the last sentence, where it reads, Council members Keith Sidnor and Carl DeWalt, who were appointed by Mayor Moe, if the word appointed may be changed to confirmed as elected rather than appointed. And also on the flip side of that page, the last paragraph, it goes on to tell about that last agenda item that we had, but it doesn't, there's no further commission action that's noted after that paragraph. I believe that Mr. Wilson made a motion on that to approve it as changed by staff, and but it's not on the minutes.
Ms. Quillen, do you understand what he's saying? For the agenda item, the last agenda item, Mr. Shipp was the applicant.
Yeah, I apologize. That must have fallen off the final copy.
That was the only thing I had. Otherwise,
Thank you.
It's good.
With the commissioner's concurrence, since this is rather substantive because it was an actual motion with a vote, may we ask that those be corrected and we will vote on those meeting minutes, the revised minutes at the next meeting.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Moving on to agenda item 3, special exception application number 879, 9701 Fort Meade Road, filed by Christ Vision Ministries for recommendation to the Board of Appeals. This agenda item includes a public hearing on the application and final action by the Planning Commission.
Good evening, Madam Chair and Commissioners. The applicant, Christ Vision Ministries, is proposing the use of a house of worship to be located at 9701 Fort Meade Road, Unit 200. This property is zoned commercial general. The prior use of the space was also a house of worship, which was approved through special exemption application number 863 in November 15th of 2016. The property is located in a strip shopping center known as Stewart Shopping Village. The property was annexed into the city of Laurel in 2014. Currently, there are 4 other businesses on the property, which include the Dutch Amish Market, Famous Kebab and Karai, Vape Chalet, and Celestial Phoenix Embroidery. Surrounding the property to the north is Laurel Plaza Shopping Center. To the west is Home Depot. To the south and east is a recreational area. The proposed house of worship will have Sunday church service, Monday counseling service, Tuesday Bible studies, and Wednesday prayer meetings. In the summer, the applicant will offer Tuesday and Wednesday vacation Bible school to children in the community. The applicant has agreed to not operate during times the Dutch Amish market is open. The proposed agreement will help eliminate any parking and traffic issues that possibly might occur on site. The House of Worship will have a 100-seat auditorium for church services, which requires 25 parking spaces to be provided on-site per Code Section 20-16.5. There are currently 203 parking spaces available on-site. It is recommended that the Planning Commission recommend approval of special exemption application number 879 to the City of Laurel Board of Appeals with the following conditions. Number 1, the applicant shall obtain a City of Laurel use and occupancy permit. Number 2, the applicant shall not operate during the following hours when the Dutch Amish market is open: Thursdays 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., Fridays 9 a.m. to 7 p.m., and Saturdays 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. And third, the applicant shall obtain a City of Laurel sign permit. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for staff? I do have one, and that is, has it been discussed, it just came up recently with the farmers market being open different days for the Thanksgiving holiday. Will the farmers market consult with, because they were open, I believe they were open Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday that weekend. Boy, they were packed. So will they need to then work with the ministry church on those days?
I think that could be agreed upon. We do have the pastor here currently. He might be able to answer that question if you have questions of him.
Does anyone else? It was just, I just wanted to make sure that that was, because it's saying that they can't operate when the market is open, and we list the opening of the market on Thursday, Fridays, and Saturdays. I just wanted to make a note that sometimes they operate on different days, and I just didn't know how the two parties had agreed. This is, has worked out to be an excellent use. Parking is, we deal with parking issues a lot when we're talking about businesses in our Main Street area and some of the difference. So this dual use of businesses using this large parking lot on opposite times has worked out very well. That was my only question. Anyone else with questions? Okay, if there are no questions, I will open the public hearing on this application filed by Christ Vision Ministries. I do not currently have anyone signed up to speak. The applicant is here if any commissioners have a question of the applicant. Is there anyone wishing to speak on this agenda item? Hearing and seeing no one, I will close the public hearing at 7:07. And I will entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I'll move to recommend approval of special exception application number 879 to the City of Laurel Board of Appeals with the listed conditions.
I will second that, Madam Chairman.
Ms. Quillen, we have a motion by Mr. Welford and a second by Mr. Kish. Please call the roll.
Mr. Welford?
Yes.
Mr. Kish?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Chairwoman Bettman?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Agenda item 4, Neo-Traditional Overlay Application Number 878 and Resolution Number 17-15-PC 7041 Contee Road, filed by Strittmatter Contee, LLC. The agenda item includes a public hearing on the application and also a final action by the Planning Commission. Before we begin this agenda item and what the application is for, the commissioners in an advance email have asked our director to please give a description, both for our information and for the public's information, to help define what does neo-traditional overlay mean in the context of the city, the residents, and Christian's going to provide that, and then we will get into the actual application. Thank you. Take your time.
Good evening, Madam Chairwoman and Commissioners. In short, the purpose and intent of the neo-traditional overlay areas is to be an alternative form of development designed to create additional development opportunities for creativity and setting of neighborhood design, enhance present and future neighborhoods within the city of Laurel, and to allow the provision of various housing opportunities which are typically by reduced front lawns with the majority of parking provided for out-of-sight and rear alleys and service areas, creates residential environments by tree-lined streets, houses with front porches, and traditional town row houses with specific architectural designs, allow for increased consolidated or comprehensively designed plans for neo-traditional proposals. Circulations through a neo-traditional development shall include a complete sidewalk system which connects all aspects of the proposed area, including access to public spaces and recreational amenities. Increase the attractiveness of the city for the potential of the development, stabilization, and improvement of its neighborhoods by increased home ownership opportunities. Previously, neo-traditional overlay projects were limited to properties that had a base zoning of R55, one-family detached. However, the code was amended last year to include property zone RT residential townhouses to be considered for neo-traditional overlay area development. Neo-traditional development are specifically for single-family homes and residential townhouses. Properties seeking neo-traditional overlay application approval must have a minimum of 5 acres of land. Additional amenities for proposed projects as a neo-traditional overlay area include dedicated open spaces, dedication and/or construction of tot lots, athletic fields, or recreational facilities and associated parking. Densities for properties with a base zoning of R55 was a maximum of 8 units per acre. Densities for properties with a base zoning of RT is similar to the RT zone, which is 10 units per acre. The city currently only has one neo-traditional overlay development, and that is currently the Crescents at Cherry Lane, which is located on Cherry Lane and around First Baptist Lane. The City of Laurel's master plan, which is a long-range planning document that provides a vision for the city, was updated last year, where some of the goals established as a part of the plan is to continue to develop Laurel as a comprehensive, balanced community with a full array of integrated and complementary land uses, provide for a quality living environment by continuing to upgrade existing neighborhoods and by providing necessary infrastructure and facilities, including active and passive parkland areas, encourage a range of housing types to provide a variety of residential alternatives for city residents. In order for an applicant to receive neo-traditional overlay application, a concept bubble plan must be reviewed by the Planning Commission and make a recommendation to the Mayor and City Council. If it is approved by the Mayor and City Council, then the applicant may apply for preliminary subdivision review by the Planning Commission, apply for forest conservation approval by the Planning Commission, final subdivision record plat approval, which is also by the Planning Commission, and then final neo-traditional site and landscape plan approval, which is also by the Planning Commission. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions of neo-traditional overlay for Christian before we get into the staff report?
Yeah, I have a
Mr.
couple.
Wilson.
Thank you, Ms. Bully. I appreciate that. It's been a while since I've been through that. So let me just make sure I understand. What we're looking for is, according to the master plan and according to, kind of the way we've done this in the past, is, front porches, a community environment, that kind of development. Is that correct?
That is correct. We look for front porches and hopefully have houses that's designed with rear loading garages and stuff of that nature to create a friendly environment.
So you said hopefully. I mean, we can kind of steer that, right?
That is correct.
Okay, so we're going to be looking for rear garages. We're going to be looking for front porches tied into the development, and with all the parks and open space and all that other kind of stuff.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I could just
Councilman
sort
Smalls.
of tag on to Councilman Wilson. Always. The Crescent, for example, again, as was mentioned, was our first shot at a neo-traditional project. I think it turned out to be a very successful project, and I know and had the opportunity to visit many of the properties and homes there. One of the I'll say, issues that we ran into with that project, while most of the project does have the alley-loaded driveways, there were a few along the very front, along First Baptist Lane, that because of the topography, we're not able to have rear-loaded garages. They're all front-loaded. So I'm hoping that with this application, we won't run into similar kinds of issues, because having rear or alley-loaded garages makes a very clean look on the streetscape. So I'm looking forward to hearing Mr. Gibbs and the applicant's presentation on this.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, we will now begin by hearing the staff report for the neo-traditional overlay concept site plan application number 878. Fleester.
Yes, good evening again. The applicant Strittmatter seeking concept neo-traditional overlay site plan approval to construct a townhouse community with a maximum of 180 dwelling units for the Fleester property. The subject property is located at 7041 Contee Road and consists of approximately 26.67 acres of land. Although the site comprises of almost 26.62 acres, only 22.9 acres is proposed to be developed with townhouses. The remaining land of the Fleester property will be devoted to open space. The property, along with the Kaufman property, which is address 7051 Contee Road, was annexed into the city of July of this year. The Kaufman property is 6.072 acres and is zone R5. However, since both of those properties were annexed into the city, the Kaufman property is not a part of this application, but that parcel will be constructed as an athletic field and deeded to the city at a later time. Staff recommends that the City of Laurel Planning Commission recommend approval to the Mayor and City Council for application number 878 Neo-Traditional Overlay Concept Site Plan for the Fleester property with the following conditions. All construction shall conform to an approved final neo-traditional overlay site and landscape plan as approved by the City of Laurel Planning Commission. The applicant shall obtain the record plat approval from the Planning Commission. The applicant shall obtain subdivision plan approval from the Planning Commission. The applicant shall also obtain forest conservation approval from the Planning Commission. And the applicant shall comply with all applicable local, state, and federal laws and regulations in the development of the property. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not sure if this is a question for staff or for the applicant. Will there be any pass-through or travel access to the apartments behind? Okay. Okay. For those of you, the applicant attorney is in the front, and the answer was no. My question was the development that's going on at the end of Van Dusen Road on the right with the apartments and all. This property, if trying to picture that, you will enter this property from Contee Road past the hospital on your left, but it will pretty much, it abuts the apartments, but there will not be any travel between that. Are there any questions for staff? Okay. I'd like to invite the applicant to speak. If you would please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Chairwoman Bettman, members of the Planning Commission, City Councilman Smalls. Pleasure for us to be here this evening. Edward Gibbs, an attorney with offices in Largo. I'm pleased to be here tonight representing Strittmatter Contee, limited liability company. As you know from our appearing here many years before you, Strittmatter also is the developer of the West Side community immediately south. And that is a mixed-use development, of course, which includes upwards of 700 multifamily residential units, approximately 60 townhomes, up to 200,000 square feet of retail, and a hotel site. There will be no access directly between this project and West Side west side being directly south. There's a substantial grade separation, and of course,
Okay.
Bear Branch Creek runs along at the foot of that grade separation. So there was never a plan for there to be a connection. Historically, let me say to you that my client purchased, we call this project Fleester because the large portion of the land area is in fact the Fleester property, approximately 27 acres. When my client purchased the Fleester property, even though we had annexed in on west side and developed within the city, we really didn't have that intention initially. That property was zoned R18C, which was a multifamily zone under Prince George's County's ordinance. And as we were meeting in the city, actually about something else, an issue came up as to whether or not we intended to annex the Fleester property into the city. And at that point, we said we really hadn't contemplated it. Whereupon we were advised and strongly urged to do so. Because under the city's master plan, this is a designated growth area and an area which was contemplated by the city to be within the municipal limits of the city of Laurel. As a result of those conversations, we went ahead and said, okay, we will annex into the city. We filed our annexation petition. The Fleester property had just a stem, literally about 10 feet of frontage on Contee Road. Consequently, my client went out and acquired the Kaufman property. The Kaufman property was owned RR at that time, and it was only after very, very serious and lengthy negotiations that they were able to acquire that property. We came back in and met with the city relative to the annexation process. We talked about what our vision was for the development of the property. We wanted to do residential townhomes, and that sort of was our plan. We also talked about recreational amenities, which would be above and beyond those associated with normal development of a townhouse community. To be certain, we are going to have the normal recreational facilities you'll see within development, areas for children to play and recreate. But we offered as part of our development something much more substantial, and that was to construct a multi-purpose athletic field, which would be initiated and completed at our entire expense, and which we would then dedicate to the city. It would become the city's property, the city's recreational amenity for use by all the citizens of the city of Laurel. Given that rather extraordinary, in our view, with respect, given that extraordinary commitment, and given the fact that this is a former mine, sand, and gravel site, a brownfield site, reclaiming it with a huge mound of dirt that you see sitting on the property today, representing a substantial undertaking by my client, and also the topographic issues which present themselves. We talked with the city about the opportunity to have some modified development standards. That led to the City Council initiating a text amendment to the Unified Land Development Code of the city to allow the RP zone, which we had been zoned as part of our annexation. When we were annexed, we went from R18C to RT, the city's RT zone. And the Kaufman property went from RR to the city's R5 zone. The RT zone being a down zoning, the R5 zone being the nearest density zone classification, so that we didn't have a 5-year wait after the annexation. So the text amendment to the Unified Development Code allowed the overlay, the neo-traditional overlay, to be applied in the RT zone. Once that bill was passed, and I think actually we were in front of you on that as well, in addition to several hearings on the annexation. So once that bill passed, we were now able to move to what we call just the designation of this property with the neo-traditional overlay, which includes the concept plan that you have before you. I will say that we embrace the analysis in the staff report. We certainly incorporate our justification statement, which we think very exhaustively analyzed the criteria for the neo-traditional overlay. We think we meet all of those criteria. Mr. Wilson, in response to some of your inquiries, I would note that the design criteria really are going to be applied at the time of subdivision plan and detailed site plan. We think we are going to meet all of the criteria. I don't think those criteria require every unit to have a rear-end garage. Sometimes that may not be possible.
No, they don't.
We're not at that point yet, but I wouldn't want to just stand up here and have someone 6 months from now say, you committed to every unit having a rear end garage. We certainly are going to have some rear end loaded garages, but I don't know that every unit will be. But there are many other criteria in the neo-traditional that will be incorporated as well into the overall development. With that being said, I'd only also add that in addition to the athletic field, there is other substantial open space area that we're going to be dedicating to the city, which I think the city's going to look at for purposes of trail connections to other locations. With that being said, I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have, and we just look forward to moving this process along.
Questions for Mr. Gibbs? I have one question regarding the athletic field. In terms of timing, I know moving into like a neighborhood, if it's going to have a pool, they sometimes say after it's so many % completed, that's when. I didn't see in anything that I read when the athletic field, is that something?
I don't know that a phasing plan has been established yet. I think that would happen probably at the subdivision stage.
Okay.
But I think my client's proclivity would be to move forward with the construction of the field at the same time the project is being developed. We're not planning to develop the townhomes and then build the field. And it's, that type of coordinated development schedule makes sense because we're going to have a public road coming into the community up through where the athletic field is located. And once you pass the athletic field, because there's going to be associated parking for the public.
Right.
And that has to be a public road. Once we pass the athletic field, we're going to pick up with the private road system, which is typically utilized for townhome development.
So as we get further, maybe we could talk about the planning of that. I agree. We don't need the athletic field first when the parking's on the other side of the street and having all the construction coming in. But I would like to see a commitment in terms of timing going into that potentially.
I think it's going to be roughly coincident.
Okay.
Both will occur at the same time.
Okay.
Madam
Thank
Chair, Mr. Gibb, would there be a space or thought given to the construction of a salt barn as requested by Public Works?
No, sir. Being very candid with you, that is well beyond what any individual project could withstand. We raised the issue of that Public Works memorandum with your staff when it was released. We view that as normal budgetary responsibilities for any municipality or government. It might be something that the city needs, but were you to add that as a condition to this project, this project would collapse and would be withdrawn. We cannot underwrite that. We have road construction requirements. We have fee and lieu requirements we have to make for the failing culvert on Contee Road. And of course, the field being a massive and expensive undertaking on my client's behalf. But those items we view well beyond any legal ability to impose as part of any adequate public facilities test. So unfortunately, we couldn't agree.
Is there space there to create such a needed
Probably not, sir.
salt barn?
Probably not. Unless perhaps the city were interested in using some of the buffer area that we're going to dedicate.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Our pleasure. Thank you very much.
Madam Chair, I do have
Councilman Smalls.
just one more comment and question. Mr. Gibbs, you mentioned that there's no plan for connectivity with West Side. I'd just like to encourage you, the applicant, and use the word walkability in making this community, walkable, whether that's sidewalks, crosswalks, whatever the case may be, because this entire area, as you well know, is going to be developed. So making this more, not an area where you've got to jump into your car to go to the gas station, or that's going to be in that area, those kinds of things. So I just know that just keep it in mind that walkability in this area, I think, is
I appreciate that,
yeah.
Councilmember Smalls. And I will say that we looked at that. The grade separation is so substantial between those two properties, it just simply doesn't lend itself, certainly never to any vehicular connection. A trail might be a possibility, But then you run into the issues with MDE and possibly the Corps for interfering those sensitive features. We have had substantial conversations with the county's Department of Permits, Inspections, and Enforcement relative to sidewalks along Contee Road.
Good.
And we actually have a site visit with DPI and our civil engineers this Thursday on site to discuss those very things.
Sure, that's exactly what I mean.
And that will certainly be the case. Yes, sir.
That's what I mean. Excellent. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate the opportunity to be here.
I do not have anyone signed up to speak. I would like to open the public hearing on the neo-traditional overlay application number 8787041 Contee Road. Is there anyone wishing to speak on this application? Hearing and seeing no one, I will close the public hearing at 7:29. If there are no further questions, I will entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I'll move to recommend approval of Resolution 17-15 PC. Do I have the right one?
Yes.
This one? This says 1716. What's the real number?
Yep, there you go.
Oh, sorry. Recommend approval of resolution number 1715 PC for the Planning Commission to recommend approval to the Mayor and City Council for neo-traditional overlay concept plan application number 878 with the outlined conditions of staff.
Madam Chairman, I'll second that.
We have a motion from Mr. Wilson and a second from Mr. Kish. Ms. Quillen, if you would please call the roll.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Kish?
Yes.
Mr. Welford?
Yes.
Chairwoman Bettman?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Agenda item 5, special exception application number 14703B, Baltimore Avenue, filed by Blue Pharms LLC for recommendation to the Board of Appeals. This agenda item includes a public hearing on the application and final action by the Planning Commission. Mr. Love.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioners. The applicant, Blue Pharms LLC, is proposing the use of a medical cannabis dispensary to be located at 14703 Baltimore Avenue, Suite B. This property is zoned commercial general. The subject property is located in a strip shopping center known as Tower Plaza. Surrounding the property to the north is a Burger King fast food restaurant. To the south is an Exxon Mobil gas station. To the west is the town center of Laurel Shopping Center. And to the east is a business park not located within city limits. The property was built in 1964. Currently, there are 11 other businesses on the property. The applicant is proposing to operate Monday to Saturday from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. The applicant is looking to hire upwards of 5 to 7 employees to work at the establishment. Per ordinance number 1862, the business can only front one of the following roads: Washington Boulevard, 2nd Street, or Baltimore Avenue. The subject property will be designed in a manner similar to a medical office. Signage will be plain as in accordance with state and city regulations. The signage is not intended to attract drive-by traffic. The patients will find the business through referral from their primary physician. The interior of the operations area of the subject property will not be seen from the exterior of the building. All spaces within the subject property that contain cannabis products will be ventilated to minimize odor inside the building. Rooms containing cannabis will be kept under negative pressure so that odors do not escape when doors are opened. No consumption of cannabis will be permitted on the interior or the exterior of the premises. Any persons violating the business's rules of conduct, exhibiting any disruptive behavior, or creating any disturbance of any kind will be issued a warning and, dependent upon severity, may be reported to law enforcement officials. The medical cannabis dispensary is consistent with the purpose and intent of the comprehensive master plan to provide for a variety of uses and services to the City of Laurel residents. Furthermore, the proposed use is not located within the vicinity of any schools or churches. The medical cannabis dispensary will be occupying 5,308 square feet of gross leasable area, which requires 26 parking spaces to be provided on site. There are currently 229 parking spaces on site. It is recommended that the Planning Commission recommend approval of special exemption application number 881 to the City of Laurel Board of Appeals with the following conditions. Number 1, the applicant shall obtain a City of Laurel use and occupancy permit. Number 2, the applicant shall allow the City of Laurel Police Department to conduct a walkthrough of the property prior to operation of the business. Number 3, the applicant shall obtain a City of Laurel sign permit. And number 4, the applicant shall comply with all federal, state, and local laws and regulations for the protection of the use of the property. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Love?
Do you know of any other applicants? You can have 2 licenses per Senate district, state Senate district, I think is my understanding. Do you know where the other one is in the 21st?
There is a one currently.
Do you know of any in work?
No.
know.
Do we have?
There, since the applicant has applied, there has been conversation with another applicant who wanted to locate within the city. However, the applicant that's before you put in their application first. I do know there's another person that's looking to locate within the 21st district. However, they haven't filed their application with the jurisdiction yet.
So is there any restriction that would keep the second one out of Laurel?
They have to be a mile apart from each other.
So they could, I guess, theoretically fit.
Possibly if they can find a location that's in either on Baltimore Avenue, Washington Boulevard, or 2nd Street, because those are the only locations that they're allowed within the city.
They also have to be 1,000 feet away from churches or schools.
Yeah, and I'm not sure there's another mile from where this one's locating to go. You can't go south, you'd be, a mile you'd be out of the city limits.
It has to be on Baltimore Avenue?
north.
It has to be facing.
Correct.
Oh, I didn't know that.
That's part of the regulation.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I think
Councilman
it's
Smalls.
important to point out to everyone here that I think we all know how much effort and work went into the state in considering medical cannabis dispensaries across the state. Equally, the mayor and council spent a considerable amount of time crafting the regulation that would govern location and all of the things that are mentioned in the staff report to locate a dispensary here in the city limits. So I just wanted to point out that there's been a considerable amount of effort that's been put into making sure that this is sort of a nondescript kind of, it's not designed to be something that would attract a lot of attention to itself. And I think signage being one of the things that's mentioned in the staff report, odors, and those kinds of things. So I just want to point out, particularly for the folks who are here and who may be viewing it, that there's been considerable work done by staff as well as the council to get to where we are tonight.
So, Mr. Smalls, wouldn't it be possible to put this on the hospital site?
Well,
'Cause you're saying
we've
it has
got
to be on
residential
Baltimore Avenue.
directly across the street from it, and we identified specific areas, as Mr. Love mentioned, where they would be allowed. So, yeah, again, it's the effort by the council, by our staff, to just make sure that they're in as visible areas, that is, they're not sort of tucked away.
So this legislation, or whatever it was that restricted where these things go, how was that, how did that come about?
It came about with the city's desire in crafting our master plan.
So that was allowed
This
as
was
part of the, and it wasn't in the master plan.
Not in mentioning dispensaries specifically, but this kind of use as a pharmacy certainly is.
Right, and if I can interject, it was, when it came to the Council for Legislation, it was proposed that it had to locate into a commercial general zone, but also the property had to face either Baltimore Avenue, Washington Boulevard, or 2nd Street. So to answer your question about locating on the hospital site, it would not be able to locate on the hospital site unless a text amendment was done to amend the code.
Yeah, I'm getting to process, because I don't remember that set of rules coming in front of the Planning Commission at all.
No, it did.
It did, it came.
Part of the master plan.
No, this was not in the master plan.
No, it wasn't a part of the master plan, but
I
it was
worked the master plan.
no, it wasn't definitely a part of the master plan, but it was a text amendment that was approved, I think, April of last year.
Did we vote on?
Yeah, I remember the Washington Boulevard.
No,
I
actually,
remember the Washington
Avenue
Boulevard
Yeah.
discussion
requirement.
because I remember talking about the length between,
Right.
on that, and the question of whether we could have one or two, and we said they would pretty much have to be at the north and south
Okay.
end
Yeah.
of the city, but I don't remember whether that was just in conjunction with the master plan
No.
discussion or what, but I do remember the discussion that we had.
No, it wasn't in conjunction with the master plan. It was a separate text amendment that was approved in
Oh, text
February.
amendment.
Yeah, it
That's
was
what
a
it
separate
was.
text amendment. It was a separate text amendment that was approved by ordinance by the mayor and city council of February of 2016.
Did it come in front of the Planning Commission prior to that?
Yes.
Yes.
That must have been when I was out. Okay, thank you.
No problem.
See, Ms. Pulley
That's been out too.
remembers a lot better than I do.
Me too.
I couldn't remember in the context, but I do. We do have several people signed up for this. I would like to invite the applicant or the applicant representative, Mr. Cal Shaw. If you would please come up and state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Chairwoman and members of the Planning Commission. My name is Alpesh Shah.
And your address, please?
Address 3301 Royal Oak Court, Ellicott City, Maryland, 21045.
Thank you. Are you the applicant, the owner, the,
I am the applicant of the special exception and the owner as well of the
Okay.
dispensary.
do you have any, or you just would like to answer questions, or do you have any presentation? When would you see that you would be opening, the length of time that it would take you to become a functioning business within the
So
city?
Once we have this hearing, and we have another hearing on the 28th, the Board of Appeals hearing,
Okay,
once we clear that and we get full approval from the city to move forward, we will then begin planning and construction, which will normally take 60 days to 90 days to complete. So after that, we have to go through state inspections from the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene. And once we approve those state inspections, we also have another state hearing from the Medical Marijuana Commission, who will finalize our license and grant us the license to start operation. So if you look at the time factor for all this, we're planning to open sometime in April.
in April.
Yeah.
Do you have any experience in this type of business in any other states or any other counties within Maryland, or?
Yes, so my team, we have a couple members of my team here, including my two other partners, who has experience out of state in
Okay.
California as well as Arizona, having dispensaries and cultivation centers. So I'm been familiar with the industry for the last 4 years, having been involved. And I'm a Maryland resident, so I'm also a business owner in Maryland for 15 years. I've been a resident from Maryland for most of my life. Been to school here, college here, everything. And I just wanted to point out to the commission that we understand this is a sensitive topic. We understand security is always a concern. We've already met with the chief of police along with the mayor's office. We have made assurance that we will work with them and the entire department to mitigate any risks or any questions they may have, and make sure that we are compliant with all the regulations. As you know, COMAR 10.62.27, which is Maryland State COMAR, specifically specifies how dispensaries should be operated, how they should be built, and the whole 9 yards. So they're pretty in deep, and we have to do a lot of things. And, we have to comply with them. We have to have their state inspection as well before we even become operational.
Thank
So
you.
obviously, we'll be in compliance with those regulations along with any City of Laurel regulations that are placed upon us.
Thank you. And in our staff report, the chief of police, we did not have any, there were no conditions or nothing there. Is most of your regulation coming from the state of Maryland?
Correct. This is a state-driven program.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Shaw? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your time.
I would like to open the public hearing on this application. I have Aaron Reed. Would you like to speak? If you would please state your name and address for the record. Welcome.
Aaron Reed, and I live in Arcata, California, 600 F Street. I want to thank you for the opportunity to be able to come in front of you guys tonight. As I said, my name is Aaron Reed, and I live in Arcata. I own and operate a 45-acre medical marijuana farm, along with the brand Jack's Extracts. I am one of a few female master growers, along with an expert in indoor and outdoor agricultural. My experience covers a wide range of cultivating processes and product packaging. I've studied the industry with Dr. Robert Mushalem, the scientist that discovered the THC molecule and also discovered the endocannabinoid system. I have extensive knowledge in cloning, transplanting, feeding, supercropping, monocropping, topping, flushing, trimming, inventory management, and regulation compliances. Thank you.
Thank you. And you're here to speak in support of the application?
No, I'm a partner.
You're your partner?
Yeah, I'm a
Thank you
partner.
very much. Thank you. Perry Coleman, welcome. If you would state your name and address for the record, please.
I'm Perry Coleman, 3226 Kellogg's Road. I'd like to thank Madam Chair and the Commissioners for having me this afternoon. I'm speaking here in support of the applicant from two perspectives. One, as a retired military honorably discharged person, I'd like to support their application for those soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. And in a more focused area, I'd like to support Mr. Cal Shaw. I've known him for approximately 4 years. I've sat beside him in numerous state legislative meetings that discussed the cannabis area. We've attended many meetings in the community, and I know him to be a solid, responsible person in the business community.
Thank you very much.
Well, I'm sorry, I got your first part of your address. What city and state?
Gwen Oak, Maryland.
I just didn't hear you.
Gwen Oak, Maryland.
Gwen Oak, Maryland. And are you part of the team?
I'm in support of the team.
Are you an investor or a partner?
Private citizen.
Okay, thank you.
Character. Thank you. I believe I have everyone that has signed in to speak. Is there anyone else wishing to speak on this application? Welcome. Oh. You would state your name and address for the record, please.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members. My name is Jasmine Patel. I live in 7513 Broken Staff in Columbia. I am part of the team, one of the operators. I have an experience. We have dispensaries in Arizona, and that's what I'll be bringing into the table to the team. Wanted to show you our dispensary layout. So that way, I know security is a concern of this cannabis, but wanted to show you a little bit of.
Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you, Aaron. Where we would have an entrance, we would have a secure reception. Every patient has an option. The state has regulated where when you register as a patient, it either gets linked to your driver's license or you have an option to pay $50 and get a patient card. So they would have to show us a patient card or a driver's license. We would have to scan it to a state system, which that tells us that if this patient is legit. And there's a limit on the product. Medicine is 4 ounces. You can have up to 4 ounces a month. system will tell us that if these patients have exceeded their limits or not. According to that, though, we can let them in to the second door where they would sit here at the lounge. We would have patient service providers come out of our retail area and greet the patients and then take them in. So it's not that patients would come in and wander around the medicine or anything of that. And then we would have surveillance system, everything that's mandated by the state. And obviously, as Cal said, our last inspection is done through MMCC, Maryland Medical Cannabis Commission, and they would give us the final approval to operate. But you guys have any other questions?
Thank you. And you had signed up, he had, just for the record, he had signed up to speak. Brooke, he's on our list. I had missed that. I'm sorry. Mr. Welford.
Is the product brought here to Laurel from California?
No, you can. A product is growing in Maryland. You cannot cross state.
I see. So you do use the growers that are up here in Frederick area.
14 growers that are approved.
Okay.
In the state of Maryland.
And are you connected in any way with the other medical marijuana dispensary that's opening in North Laurel on Route 1?
No.
It's a totally separate business.
Yes, it's totally separate group of people.
I see. Okay, thank you.
So if I could ask a question, I just haven't been following the law. So when you get a prescription, it doesn't say, why do you need a retail area? When I go to the drugstore, they don't let me wander in the back.
Right, so our architect named this retail area, but so they're not allowed to touch the medicines or...
Does my prescription say I'm supposed to have 4 joints? I mean, how does it work?
No.
You'll choose which kind you want. I think you can get,
But does my doctor do that, or?
No, a doctor gives you a recommendation that you can consume this medicine, and then you would come in and...
How do you want to consume it? Do you want to smoke it? Do you want to eat it?
Consume it. So we have it in form of flour, and we have it also in form of concentrates. State of Maryland did excellent where we do not have edibles, brownies, candies, cookies, and all that stuff. Either you can have it as a concentrate or as a flour form, and then it is your choice, which one.
Okay.
You want. And then there's a limit because they know that, there's a limit of 4 ounces.
So I'm allowed 4 ounces per month. One other question is, are there any health providers that are subsidizing cannabis today?
Any provide?
Can you get this with your health plan?
No.
Not yet?
Not yet.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Welford?
On the 4 ounces a month, what is the legal amount that someone can leave your store with and drive home with?
Up to 4 ounces.
They can have 4 ounces
yes.
in your vehicle going home with it?
Yes.
With the prescription and the ID
right.
and all of the...
Authorized to have it, yes.
Yep.
So they don't have to come every week to get 1 ounce every week. They can take 4 ounces and go home and come monthly.
Monthly, yes. So, and then if they try to go to another dispensary, it won't work because of the state regulated system.
Do you have a number of people that are currently holding the authorization card?
So there are 15,000 approved patient and 10,000 pre-registered patient total in state of Maryland.
Yep.
And you are, so I know of yours, and there's another one in North Laurel, so it's the only 2 I've heard of so far, so that's a lot of customers coming to just 2 locations.
No, there are 102 total dispensaries in the state of Maryland.
Oh.
2 per each district, a senatorial district. So these patients will be, majority of our patients will be from the city of Laurel.
And these other districts, they also have up-and-coming dispensaries that are underway right now?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
If I can clarify something to Mr. Wilson.
Please.
When you're in our dispensary, you'll meet with our doctor that's on our board also. And it's not like you're walking through a pharmacy. It's more of educating the consumer on the best way to take their medicine. Because this is so new to everyone. While the doctors give them the prescriptions, the form of their medicine isn't on there. They're educated when they come into our facility, whether it is a joint or a concentrate, a tincture, or a salve.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? Welcome. Good evening.
My name is Cindy Russell, and I reside at 794 Fairview Avenue in Annapolis, Maryland. And I'm actually here representing the owners of Tower Plaza, which is Jordan 1 LLP. I'm the property manager. And I met with Cal and Justin a few months back and entertained the idea of having them move into Tower Plaza. We are definitely all for it. We definitely see the medical benefits for that with the way that the rules and regulations are set out by the state. It is not where you can just roll up, as I explained earlier, and just walk in there. It's very controlled, and I think it's going to bring a lot of benefit to those patients that really need it. Plus, the education process that they have behind it and the team that they have behind them to educate the consumer that maybe normally would take an opiate versus now they want to try the medical cannabis is a win-win situation across the board for those people that are going to be carrying a medical marijuana card.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Could you please spell your last name for me?
Sure. Russell, like the candy.
Just rest. Thank you very much. Is there anyone else wishing to speak on this agenda item? Hearing and seeing no one, I will close the public hearing at 7:55 p.m. If there are no further questions of the applicant or of staff, I will entertain a motion.
Madam Chairman, I make a motion that the Planning Commission recommend approval of special exception number 881 to the City of Laurel Board of Appeals with the 4 following conditions that are stated here.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I'll take Mr. Kish with the motion and Mr. Welford with the second. Ms. Quillen, if you would please call the roll.
Mr. Kish?
Yes.
Mr. Welford?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Chairwoman Bettman?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Moving on to agenda item 6, resolution number 17-17-PC, Planning Commission determination that proposed PUD Amendment number 880 for property known as 14415 Greenview Drive is a substantial departure from the previously approved PUD plan. This agenda item includes the public hearing on the application and the final action by Planning Commission. As with the neo-traditional, before we start the discussion on the property at Greenview Drive, we have asked the director, Ms. Pulley, to please provide an overview of PUD, what it stands for, what it means in the city, and what it means in the plan, and then we will get into this application.
Good evening once again. The purpose and intent of the Planned Unit Development Zone, or simply the PUD Zone, is to provide for certain uses and structures that obtain development approval by the Mayor, City Council to continue uses permitted by right. Expansion or development cannot occur unless the owner obtains amendment approval to the plan, previously approved plans. The PUD Zone was established in the late 70s or early 80s. There is only one area located in the city of Laurel that has this zoning classification, and is the area around the Greens, a protected community. The subject area of the Protected Greens Planned Unit Development Community was annexed into the city in 1981 and placed into that zone. When the area around the Greenview Drive was annexed into the city, there was an approved plan for development which included construction for dwelling units, office buildings, retail, and recreational facility. The golf course country club, known as Laurel Pines at the time, was also included in that, which was in operation. Now, in that location, there is the Greenview Drive Pool Complex, Cabana and Park, which is owned by the city, the Lakeview at Greens office buildings, residential communities, Patuxent Glen, Greens of Patuxent, and the Spring House apartments, which are in close proximity. Densities allowed for the PUD zone for single-family lots are lots of 6,000 square feet and also 4,000 square feet for single-family homes, which equates to either 7.3 dwelling units per acre or 10 dwelling units per acre. For townhouse units, the density is similar to the RT zone, which is 10 units per acre, which home size of 3,000 square feet for outer lots and 2,000 square feet for inner lots in the PUD zone. Once again, no new development can occur within the zone unless the owner of the property requests to have the plans amended. Once the owner decides to request an amendment to the PUD plan, the Planning Commission has to determine if the request is in substantial agreement with the approved plan or whether it represents a substantial departure from what was previously approved. Amendments that are considered in agreement with the approved plan require site plan approval from the Planning Commission. However, if the proposed plan is considered a substantial departure from previously approved plans, the mayor and city council must approve the amendment application. If the council approves an amendment application, then the owner can proceed to obtain site plan approval of a proposed project from the Planning Commission. Depending on the type of uses proposed determines what applications would need to be filed. The PUD zone limits uses as opposed to other zones within the zone. When the PUD zone was established, there was only certain uses that were allowed. And that's all I have for the rundown for it. If you have any questions, let me know.
I have a couple. Are there others with questions? Mr. Wilson, go ahead.
I just want to make sure I understand. So the first thing that this body would be called on to decide is it's a substantial difference from what was original.
That is correct, sir.
And then the applicant would, if that was approved, then the applicant would go off and come up with a site plan just like any other thing, and then we're back into the normal process.
That's correct.
Well, wait a minute. If that were the case, there would be only one agenda item tonight.
No.
There are two. So
no, if it's a substantial departure.
That is the first question, and
right.
We'll clarify that in a minute. I want to go back to PUD, but I want to make sure we're very clear on what his question is. Tonight, we have two separate agenda items.
That is correct.
One will be just to say that an applicant has come to us, and as a body, we have reviewed that application, and it is a major departure from what's in it.
That is correct.
We aren't approving anything that's in it. We're saying this person has come and that's a part. The second agenda item in front of us today is not a site plan, correct?
No, it's not a site plan, although the applicant provided their overall vision
Right.
with the plan that
And we'll
proposed.
see that in a little bit.
Right, that is not the site plan that you guys will be approving or recommending approval to the mayor and city council. It is simply shows that they're proposing to redevelop the golf course into a residential community.
Okay.
So that's the map amendment?
That's the map amendment.
Correct.
Okay. I'd like to go back to just PUD and make sure I understood. So basically, the property that we are talking about is unique to the city, and this is the only piece of property in the city that is under this. We've heard R5s and RTs and all of that this
Right.
evening. This is the only property?
Yes, ma'am. This area is the only property that has the PUD unit development classification.
And when it came into the city
It was-
as a bulk, that is how it came in, and there have been no amendments or requests for amendments to make any changes?
No,
Is that correct?
No, there has been a few amendments to make changes over the years. There were two map amendment approvals prior to change the mix of development. There was also an amendment to change the name from Laurel Pines to Patuxent Golf
okay.
Course. Also, there was also an amendment to strike out a restaurant that was proposed for the development to add more office space.
Okay. Thank you. So unlike our neo-traditional discussion this evening where people can go and drive through the crescents of Laurel to see what that means, here we're talking about a unique, basically, set. There isn't something else.
Right,
like
it's
this.
strictly what's located in the Patuxent Greens area with the existing communities as well as the golf course.
And we're talking about an ordinance or basically a master plan piece that was envisioned in 1981, basically, right?
Right, the PUD zone was established around that time, and that's when the properties were annexed into community, they were placed into the PUD zone.
Okay,
This is
so
before you were
about
born.
30. Same with John. Wait a minute. Okay. Thank you. Are there any other questions about, and PUD for everyone, you're going to hear that a lot. It is the planned unit development. And if you need to ask, please ask. With that, thank you very much, Christian. Now, I would like you to, I believe you are delivering the staff report.
I am.
And again, for the audience, and I know we have a lot of people signed up, we are on agenda item 6. So Christian's going to explain what just this specific item is related to. Thank you.
Not a problem. Good evening again. The applicant is requesting Planning Commission determination that the proposed PUD amendment is a substantial departure of the previously approved PUD plan for the Patuxent Greens Golf Course located at 14415 Greenview Drive. The property was part of the first 1981 annexation for the city of Laurel, which included an approved plan to have, along with the golf course, dwelling units, office space, retail, and a recreational facility. The property is zoned PUD unit development existing and located in Neighborhood 10 in the city's master plan. Along with some of the goals of the master plan stated earlier, this project also encourages a substantial portion of future housing stock to be single-family detached housing, including high-quality custom-built homes. The applicant, who is the new owner of the golf course, has filed an amendment application that requires approval from the mayor and city council. According to the code, at any time after approval of a final plan of a planned unit development area, the owner may request an amendment to their plans. Upon receipt of request for amendment, the Planning Commission shall determine whether such proposed amendment is in substantial agreement with the approved final plan, or if the request represents a departure from the intent of prior approvals. Since the proposed amendment is to redevelop the golf course into a residential community, it is considered a significant departure from the approved plan to operate the property as a golf course. Previously, there has been approved amendments for the PUD zone, which included the reconfiguration of development mix for the community, changes to the permitted and the prohibited uses for the zone, and also the name change, as I mentioned earlier. Staff recommends that the Commission determines that the proposed amendment is a substantial departure from the previously approved PUD plan.
Thank you. Any questions for Christian related to this agenda item?
Not here, Madam Chair.
Okay. I do have several, hearing none, I will open the public hearing on resolution number 17-17-PC, which is a Planning Commission determination that the proposed PUD amendment number 880 for property known as 14415 Greenview Drive is a substantial departure from previously approved PUD plan. I have several people signed up for 6 and 7. If I will call those by name. If you would prefer to wait, again, I would ask if you have comments on this application or this agenda item. This is to determine whether it is or is not a deviation from what it was intended to use. Cheryl Pianim?
Yes.
Pianim? Welcome.
Thank you.
If you would state your name and address, please.
Yes, ma'am. My name is Cheryl Pianim. I live at 14207 Summit Lane in Laurel. I'd also like to add that I would like to speak with number 7.
Okay, I will put that here too.
I am a resident of the Patuxent Glen community. I am also the vice president of the HOA. And I know that there is a divide in my neighborhood, and I cannot speak for the condominium. I don't live there. I don't have anything to do with their HOA or their board, but specifically the Patuxent Glen. There is a great divide. There are people that are for this development, people that are against it. I was unfortunately not able to make the meeting last night, but I did watch it online, and there were several concerns that were brought up. Specifically, a lady particularly said that she paid a premium for her house when the development was first built because she looked onto the golf course, and whether or not that will be addressed, that is going to have to be up to the developer as to how they kind of compensate for those original houses. But personally, as from the board aside, as a resident of that neighborhood, I would much, much rather see use of that land go to something like a housing development versus a strip mall or more business centers. The golf course, honestly, the attendance on that golf course is so low. It barely gets used at all. And when it does get used, it's only mostly during the summer. Like, it does not generate revenue right now. It's barren land is basically what it is. I understand that there'll be way more traffic coming and going, but honestly, having a housing development there would be way better than a strip mall or anything else. And making use of land that is readily available, because this is an up-and-coming city. It's growing in popularity. It's so close to the metropolitan area and major highways that, having it be developed for useful, I'm definitely want to say that I'm for the change of the development.
Thank you. Oh, there was Cindy Russell. She was also, sorry. 6. Holly Ulmer?
Yes.
Welcome.
Thank you.
And you're also signed up for both number 6 and 7?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I believe I will.
Thank you.
Yes. Again, hello, Holly Ulmer. I reside at 9408 Springhouse Lane, K. So I live in the neighborhood, not in a house, but I'm one of the apartment renters. I've loved living in this neighborhood. The last neighborhood I lived in was so noisy. And I see this neighborhood as one of the rare jewels left in Laurel. We see open space and we think immediately we need to develop it. But our young people, a lot of young people come and use the pool. I work with young people at the University of Maryland. And there's a rarity of green spaces left in our community. So yes, I believe this is a substantial departure. So I'm very concerned about how it will impact current residents, and I definitely resonate, even though I'm not a house landowner, with the people that own property. How is this going to impact the people currently living there? Will it be a better quality of life to have more noise, more cars? The traffic in our area is already terrible, and we know that this is located very close to the 197, 198 intersection, a real critical intersection in our community. So, so one of the reasons I'm very concerned about a departure is due to traffic patterns. Have the developers, has the town carefully thought about the implication of traffic and what this will mean for our community? One of the other items I'm concerned about is the impact on the environment. Has a study been done? Golf courses use a lot of chemicals in their grounds. And will the ground be safe for people to have residences built on that ground? What will the impact be on the river to have all those buildings added there? Has there been any discussion and careful study done on environmental impact? But my biggest concern about a deviation has to do with the elephant in the room, that it's a floodplain. In the 9 years I've lived in the neighborhood, I have seen that golf course flood. It looks like a prehistoric lake.
Can I ask you just to hold one second? Let me make sure that I'm clear.
Yes.
Because the question before us isn't whether we want to deviate, or the question before us is just, is it a deviation? And I believe you have agreed that it is a departure.
Yes.
So
I have. I speak in saying that clearly.
it is a departure.
And I'll
Okay.
save the rest for later.
Save the rest for when we talk about a map amendment, what might go on there.
Yes.
Because right now, that the first question before us isn't whether we want to do something or what we want to put there, but the question is, someone has come to us with an application, and do we agree that it is a departure? Okay?
So I definitely say it is a very, very significant departure. May
Thank
that be
you
on the
very
record.
much, and I will invite you back up.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bill or Alan, on number 6, did you?
Madam Chair, members of the board, Councilman Smalls, Bill Shipp with the law firm in the county here. On behalf of the applicant, and as I understand it from the chairwoman's summary, we agree with your summary that the vote on this motion is, if the vote is against the motion, it would be a determination that it's not a substantial departure, and if the vote for the motion, it would be a determination that it is a substantial departure. We've already met with staff and had this discussion, and we agree that it's a substantial departure, so we support it.
Thank you, Mr. Shipp. Is there anyone else wishing to speak on the proposed PUD amendment that 14415 Greenview Drive, the proposal is a substantial departure from previously approved PUD plan? Welcome. If you would please come up and state your name and your address, please.
Hi, my name is Nina McDaniel. I live on Greenview Drive overlooking the golf course, and it is absolutely a substantial deviation from the current land use. And not only that, it's going to modify all of the T&E species environment, drainage, and every other associated environmental documentation that's needed for these kind of developments.
Thank you. And do you want to be also called up for number 7 when we get there? I will. And your address on Greenview, I'm sorry.
Is that required for public access television?
You know what? I don't know, but if you could come up and give it to me for the record, no, at the end, or I'll tell you what, if you wouldn't mind just going over to the side or to the back and writing it. But no, I appreciate the question that you raised, but I do believe we need it for the record. Thank you. Yes, sir, welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I did sign in on the other sheet over there. My name is Samuel Epps. I live at 9431 Trevino Terrace. And yes, this is a substantial deviation from the planning. My back deck sits directly currently right now where the driving range is that they allotted one night. They came in and just allotted driving range to go in there, but it's part of the golf course, so we had to deal with it. But certainly when we bought there, we did not buy there because we wanted more houses. And so I certainly will want to speak on 7 as that come up. And Madam Chair, will we get an explanation on what 7?
Absolutely, absolutely. That's why we've separated these, because this first one is just a question before us. It's more I would say, a technical vote to open up the next discussion that says, if it is a deviation, then there is a separate route that we need to go.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Okay, and that's where Ed's sign up was. Okay. Is there anyone else wishing to speak on this item? Hearing and seeing none, I will close the public hearing at 8:17 p.m. and entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I will move to make sure I get this right, that we recommend that this is, or we find, I think this is a finding for us, right? We find that this is a substantial departure from a previously approved PUD plan.
I'll second.
Mr. Wilson has made a motion. Mr. Welford has seconded. Ms. Quillen, if you will please call the roll.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Welford?
Yes.
Mr. Kish?
Yes.
Chairwoman Bettman?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. And now, moving on to Agenda Item 7, which is the PUD, the Planned Unit Development Map Amendment Application Number 880 and Resolution Number 17-16-PC, 14415 Greenview Drive, filed by CS Patuxent Greens LLC, including a public hearing on the application and final action by the Planning Commission. Ms. Pulley.
Good evening once again. The applicant, who is the new owner of the Patuxent Greens Golf Course, is seeking map amendment approval to amend the approved PUD plan for the property. The site was annexed into the city in 1981 and placed in the Planned Unit Development PUD zone. Approximately 267 acres of land was a part of that annexation. The approved plan at that time included various types of dwelling units, office space, retail, and of recreational facility uses. The golf course currently consists of almost 192 acres, and the applicant is proposing to develop approximately 80 acres into a residential community of single-family and townhouse dwelling units, with a clubhouse and other active and passive recreational amenities. Although the proposed vision and supporting documents show up to 450 units for the project, the final design and configuration of the community is not decided. There has to be significant amount of engineering to the site to determine the layout. Furthermore, if the map amendment application isn't approved, the applicant can apply for site plan approval. The 450 unit maximum is based on the allowed density for the site, with 80 acres being the projected net tract for the project. 5.6 dwelling units per acre is allowed for the development, which proposes 448 units. Overall, the maximum proposed density for the site is in accordance with what was previously approved for the development and is also with code standards. In an effort to continue to work with the community to hear and address their concerns, the applicant has agreed to have a community meeting here at City Hall after the holidays, but prior to the January 8th Mayor and City Council meeting. It is recommended that the Planning Commission recommends approval of map amendment application number 880 to the Mayor and City Council with the following conditions. If the map amendment application is approved, the applicant shall obtain forest conservation approval, final site and landscape approval, subdivision record plat approval, and the applicant shall comply with all applicable local, state, and federal laws and regulations in development of the property. Also, I would like to state for this property, for this project, if approved, the applicant will be required to get significant other approvals with the Maryland Department of Environmental, Prince George's County Soil Conservation District, stormwater management approval from Prince George's County, WSSC approval as well, and also some approvals from FEMA. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions for staff?
I do. There'll be a traffic study required at what stage?
The traffic study, they submitted a traffic study with this project, and their traffic engineer, our expert, is here as well, and State Highway Administration provided comments. In the revised staff report that you received, the comments from SHA were a part of it.
So the traffic study was based on?
Based on the analysis of the community and the existing homes.
450 homes? What was the base?
450 homes.
Of what mix? Just 450 homes?
Right. But their expert can speak more to that.
Okay, but would that have been required to get to a map amendment?
No, it wasn't required for the map amendment, but the applicant provided all that information up front to try to move the process along.
So as we move further down the pike on this, we might want some modifications to that.
There will be modifications to it because the Public Works Department asked them to make some amendments to some of the pages within the traffic analysis.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
But to answer your question, technically when developments occur, when at site plan time, that's when they usually provide the staff, the traffic study.
Okay, So we're not at that stage yet.
Right, this is just for the applicant to be able to submit an application for site plan approval, but the applicant provided a traffic study with their supporting documents with the map amendment application.
And then will there be a Corps of Engineers? Because there was a map change, the way I read through the doc. Is it FEMA or Corps of Engineers? We have to have a map change on the flood maps?
Yes, that's what the applicant is proposing to do, and from what I was told, the Corps of Engineers has already been out to the site a few times, I believe.
But for this project to move forward kind of the way they envision it, it will require a floodplain map amendment?
Not for this process, but what they want to do is have it amended to be able to work through the floodplain mitigation issues.
And who approves that?
Steve Allen, who's our floodplain manager, provides comments for what needs to be done, but also it has to have approvals from Maryland Department of Environmental, and then they'll submit something to FEMA as well. But they have a representative here that can speak to that in more great detail.
Okay, I'll wait. And I'd like to hear a little bit more about that whenever you guys.
Yeah, and also the applicant has a PowerPoint presentation that addresses a lot of the issues that you may have questions to that are a little out of my expertise.
And I would just like, again, for our information and for the public's information, to be very clear on what the map amendment, what this motion or what this I guess, application is for. We are not approving or denying tonight 400 homes going in there and different things like that.
Right, no, simply, ma'am, this application is to allow them, or your motion is to allow the council to either approve the map amendment application or to deny it. And if it's approved, then it allows the applicant to submit the appropriate zoning applications for site plan approval, which is subdivision approval, site plan, forest conservation, and the so forth, regular applications that you see for residential development.
Okay, and so I watched both the work session of the council and the council meeting, and some of the commissioners have decided to wait and hear it fresh. So we've got a varying degree up here of how much we've already heard, and that's why I say I just want to make sure. So what is? Because sometimes I'm not sure when the council is discussing something that we haven't yet discussed. I'm trying to get that straight, but. What we are making a recommendation for is to inform the mayor and city council for the January 8th meeting.
Right.
And again, just in reference to a map amendment.
Right, for them to be able to amend the approved plans, for them to be able to apply for their site plan approvals.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for your patience for all of that. And I will also ask your patience. I know that some of you are familiar faces and have been joining both the work session and the city council meeting. And but for some, tonight's presentation by the applicant and also the comments from those of you that have signed up and for those of you that have spoken before, again, you're welcome to speak again this evening, because there are some people that will be hearing it for the first time, and there will be some people that are learning new information as we go. So what I would like to, at the outset, say that I have asked that the applicant deliver the complete presentation. We commissioners, unless we feel very compelled to interrupt you, are going to go uninterrupted. We will write our questions. I understand that you have a multi-person presentation also. And I would ask that you try to limit it to 20 to 25 minutes. And if we feel like you're getting a little bit long in any particular thing, we'd like to move you along. But this is very important for the city. And so we don't want to shortchange the applicant on putting that explanation out, and also for those of you that are here that would like to speak. So with that, up on my clock up here, I've got about 8:27. So with that, I'd like to invite the first speaker.
Sorry for all the complications.
No, thank you.
Good evening, Madam Chairwoman, members of the council, Commission and Council Member Smalls. My name is Alan Cohen. My address is 6290 Montrose Road, Rockville, Maryland 20852. I would like to thank the commission for their time this evening while my team presents the proposed redevelopment of the Patuxent Greens Golf Course. This is a very large project with lots of moving parts. For the record, this is not my first development of this size. I have developed a few larger and a few smaller. I have my entire team here this evening to present, discuss, answer questions I know you all will have. With me this evening is my land use attorney, Bill Shipp, civil engineer, routers consultant, and my traffic consultant, the traffic group. We have been working very hard to come up with a plan that is current and responsible. Before I turn this over to my team, I wanted to let you in the record know the future of the existing golf course. For the past 5 years, the golf course has been losing money. In 2017, I purchased this July 2017. For the calendar year 2017, the golf course will lose $353,000. The Patuxent Green Golf Course will remain open through the 2018 season. After that, with or without my approvals, the Patuxent Green Golf Course and clubhouse will be no more. Thank you all for your time. I will now turn it over to Bill Shipp unless you all have any questions for me.
Any questions for you?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you again, Madam Chair, members of the Commission, Councilman Smalls. For the record, again, William Shipp with law offices in the county. Here today on behalf of the applicant. We appreciate your patience and your time. It is an important project. We will try to move through our presentation as promptly or quickly as possible without rushing, so that if there's questions, people will be able to ask them. I did want to, if I could, as a house cleaning matter, in our statement of justification, we referred to a park and planning study on golf courses, which talks about the contraction in the market with golf courses because of the overexpansion. And I wanted to present a copy of that to your staff.
Thank you.
So this is an important project. We do have a PowerPoint presentation we want to run through. We have a number of consultants that are going to speak with you tonight. We want to talk about the vision for the project because, as you heard, the golf course is going to transition. And we have a vision for bringing it back as a quality neighborhood, very pedestrian-oriented, and you'll hear more about that. You also already heard some questions about the floodplain and the floodplain map. It's a very important question, both for the golf course and for the community. We understand that. We've been, obviously, at the hearings, the work session. We've listened. We've studied that, talked to their staff. We've submitted a detailed engineering study on the floodplain. But it's not just our property that's affected by the floodplain maps. There is a certain portion of the existing neighborhood, as you may be aware, that has struggled with the fact that the FEMA maps put them into the floodplain, although they technically have no problem with flooding on their lots. So that's an issue that's very important, and we're going to talk about that as well. There's also been comment in some of the prior meetings about issues of water and ponding on the golf course, and we're going to explain that a little bit, how the golf course was not designed with stormwater management. And that's why there's water there, and we have a plan to take care of that. Also, that we have talked about traffic a little bit already. We submitted a traffic study because we know traffic is always an issue, and we wanted to be upfront about that. We've studied the intersections. We have our traffic consultant here, but I want to make clear, because Commissioner Wilson asked about it, because it's an important notation, is that when we come back for an actual, if fortunate enough to get to that point, with an actual presentation with the site plan, we'll have an exact mix of units, an exact count, and we will update the traffic study to that date with that specific proposal. So this is a starting point. I want to say that as to everything you're going to see today. What we're asking for is approval recommendation to the City Council for us to get to the next stage. It allows us to prepare more detailed plans that would be fully evaluated again. Many of the referrals that you've received in your record are really things that will apply at the detailed site plan phase when we get a specific plan in front of you. But we're hearing it now, which is good. And we're digesting that. Part of that reason that we're getting some detailed comments is that we have provided a detailed vision for the project, and we're going to see that. And I will try to reference for you the distinction in map amendment and the visioning illustrative plan. So I want to go through some slides now very quick. This one, I think everybody knows where the site is. This just shows you the existing golf course area. This is a cover sheet that shows some of the visioning for the project, where we would envision seeing a naturalized feel, pedestrian scale, amenities, and natural features highlighted throughout the community. This is an orientation map that shows you the limitations of the PUD. So it's not just our property, but includes the developed parcels as well. The next slide shows you a bubble plan, which is really the technical map of our concept for the map amendment. It shows you that we're proposing a development envelope within a portion of the golf course. It's roughly 80 acres of 190 or so acres of total acreage. You'll see a big piece up to the north is part of our property. It's forested, and it's on the other side of Bear Creek. We are not touching that. But as Christian mentioned in her presentation, the densities calculated within the development envelope, the 80 acres, are within the density ranges of the PUD allowed. So even if you look, if you looked at the whole golf course area, it would be 2 units to the acre. But within the 80 acres, the mix of units at 450, and the mix will be determined, but at 450 max, it would be around 5.6 per acre, which is within the range allowed in the PUD. We would see doing a variety of houses, just like the PUD has now, single families at the 4,000 minimum square foot size, lot size, and then also there's another variety at 6,000 square foot for lots for singles, and then townhouses within the density range of 10 units per acre. We are not proposing multifamily. There was, in one of those early amendments for the PUD when it was first established, a proposal for multifamily. We talked about that, and we're told in no uncertain terms that multifamily should not be considered in this project. And we took that off the table. We have made, if you watch the presentation at the work session, we've already made some changes to add some slides to address some of the comments that have come up. And you'll see that if you saw the prior one as we go. The next slide shows you the buffers that we're proposing along the adjoining property. This is in the scale that's not zoomed in, but we're foreseeing homeowners parcels that would bring our property adjacent to the existing neighborhood, so there'd be a buffer of an HOA parcel within our property that would not be part of someone's lot. So that would keep owner activity outside of this buffer area next to the existing neighborhood. We're also putting singles next to the singles, and also quite a few singles next to the multifamily or the quads, but there are some townhouse mixes up in that corner. The next slide is the circulation slide that shows you kind of the orientation to the surrounding area in terms of circulation in and out of the property, mass transit, bus lines, and the 1/2 mile walking circle. So now we get into some of the issues that deal with the more visioning of the site. So you're going to see some things that show you what the project could look like. But I want to be clear that this is not what you're being asked to recommend approval on tonight. These are concepts that we can work through that will inform us if we're lucky enough to go to the next phase, and will inform the site plan that we prepare for your consideration again. At this point, I'd like to bring up our consulting land planner, Alex Villegas, who will walk you through some of these slides.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Commissioners, and Council Member. For the record, my name is Alex Villegas. I'm a Senior Principal with Rogers Consulting, 1101 Mercantile Lane, Largo, Maryland. And I'm here to go and give you an overall of the vision of the Patuxent Greens development. The details you're going to see are above and beyond what a typical PUD you'll see. And as Bill mentioned, I want to get into some additional details from the questions that we have heard at the council work section and the council meeting last night. And these are specific about traffic, stormwater management, and the 100-year flood. The first slide that you see here is the illustrative plan for the project. And one of the key components is how all the PUDs and all the communities are connected, not just by internal networks, but an extensive trail system. We are taking into account the open space. We're going to have massive open spaces on the property. We're actually, when you look at it, the golf course has been developed. It's a developed site. We're going to reduce the development site to actually create and provide more open space. The open space is all going to be connected, and you can see in this slide with the dotted line, but trails, we're going to see a connectivity using the existing water features that are located on the property. I'm going to talk to you about the entrance to the community where we see a divided median. This is going to be about 450 feet before you actually get to the first house in our proposed development, just for enhancing the landscape of the community. We're going to provide sidewalks on both sides. And to your right, as you access the community, you're going to see the clubhouse. Even though the townhomes and single families are integrated inside the development, we're providing extensive buffers between our proposed development and the existing communities. This is to the north, and this is to the south. And you can see on this slide, we want to describe that the community is going to have a main entrance that is going to have the monumental entrance so people can see it, know where we're going to go. Patuxent Greens is not a typical suburban development. We are thinking as a vision, as a neo-traditional urban style development. I was so pleased to hear Christian speaking today, and doing that presentation, it was perfect timing as she was reading my slides. And when we're doing this urban style development, homes are going to get closer to the street. Front yards become additional outdoor space, promoting social interaction among residents. Across many streets, open areas and trails provide additional gathering places for residents to meet, chat, or play. Madam Chair made a comment regarding when you can go and see and drive a community. And I'm going to mention that Rogers Consulting has been involved in multiple award-winning communities, neo-traditional communities, and one of them is located nearby in the city of Gaithersburg. The community name is Kenlands, and when you get a chance to go to Kenlands, it's over 20 years, and you can start to see what our vision is for this type of development. And these slides really illustrate what's going to see. You're going to have streets, the houses closer. This is not a typical cul-de-sac. Now I jump to a slide where you're seeing the single family detached. You're not going to have the typical cul-de-sac. These are more bump outs to include open areas. You can have the pet walking, the gathering as well. Homes are still positioned close to the street, with the front yard being an important area of interaction. Pet walking. Then we have these acres for passive recreation. And when you have trails, lakes, a community center, pocket parks, large areas for program active recreation might be not necessary. So instead, for the Patuxent Greens, we offer large area for on-program, passive and active recreation, situated mostly behind the residents, allowing pretty much residents to choose what they want to do outside. In these slides, you might see the kids playing soccer. The other ones, I don't know, frisbee today, or dog walking, or picnic. So give it option to the people how to better enjoy the open space. I'm going to turn a little bit into the architecture and reinforce the neo-traditional styles of the community. We're not going to propose front-loaded garages for the townhouses. which is going to allow these type of loops where it's integrated, the house is going to be closer to the street. A little bit of the single-family detached unit. And to expand on Bill, there are three main questions that we got from everybody: traffic, stormwater management, and 100-year floodplain. I'm going to have Mr. Wes Gacker with the traffic group to discuss traffic, and I'll come back to tell you about the stormwater management and the 100-year floodplain.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the Commission, Councilman Smalls. For the record, my name is Wes Guckert, President of the Traffic Group. We're a firm of traffic engineers and transportation planners. And indeed, we did prepare a traffic study. We looked at about 7 different intersections along 197. We did that so that we would have an understanding of the impact of this project. And it was based upon a mix of single-family units and townhouse units. We looked at what the impact would be from the project. We conducted the study, conducted the analysis, submitted it to the State Highway Administration. They have come back and said they agree with our study, the way it was done, the study findings, and we made recommendations for a couple improvements to intersections, one at Contee Road and the other at 198. In addition, what's shown on the slide is that the community.
I'm sorry, and I said we weren't going to interrupt. Contee Road?
Yes, down at 197 and Contee. I'm sorry.
I just can't figure out how Contee Road would figure into this property at all.
Well, we went all the way down. We went all the way down to Contee Road as a southern end on the south, and went all the way up to 198 on the north. Okay. So we looked at several miles from the site to make sure that we covered, because obviously as you're going south, some folks will turn at Contee, others will go down to the Parkway. So we looked at a broad area, including the intersection of 197 and Clubhouse. So we did make recommendations down at Contee and also up at 198. But what's shown on the slide is a result of comments that we received from the council about looking at the potential for a northbound right turn lane along 197 at Clubhouse. And the developer has agreed to take a look at that. If we can fit that in and have it approved by the State Highway Administration, we're certainly willing to do that and take a look at that. Right now, there's not a northbound right turn lane. There's a grass area and then a guardrail. And so the idea would be if we can fit in a right turn lane that the State Highway Administration would approve, the developer is certainly willing to do that. There was a comment made the other night about the fact that 450 homes would likely have 1,000 cars. I want to make sure that we just, as the last point I want to make is to cover that, because clearly, while there may be 900 or 1,000 cars if each person has at least 2 cars, that's not the way. Traffic doesn't all move in and out in a 1-hour period. In fact, traffic moves in and out over typically about 3 hours in the morning and 3 hours in the evening, typically 6 to 9 in the morning, 4 to 7 in the evening. And what way traffic studies are undertaken is that they look at the peak 1 hour of traffic. And that normally is going to occur at a circumstance where you've got about 30% of the cars are moving in and out during the peak 1 hour, and 30% of the cars moving in and out during the evening 1 hour. The rest that are called shoulder hours is when folks are leaving earlier for work or leaving later for work or telecommuting for a portion of the morning and then going into work. So although there may be 900 or 1,000 cars if everyone has 2 cars, they're not all moving about at the same time. It's just not what has happened. And this is based upon thousands of studies that have been undertaken to look at the amount of traffic that's generated by residential developments as well as other types of projects. So we're not saying there's not going to be cars there or driveways or garages, but the fact is we're looking at the amount of traffic that's going to be generated during the peak hour. That's what the Highway Administration looked at and concurred with our findings and the improvements, even though they are quite far away to the south.
The last few slides will go about the stormwater management and how we're going to propose stormwater management. First of all, for the stormwater management, we're going to provide environmental site design, which is the latest for the Prince George's County as well as the state of Maryland code. We, at yesterday hearing, a colleague, another civil engineer, was also present and raised a really good question, like what is going on Patuxent Greens, how you see several ponds, but what are these ponds for? And keep in mind that these ponds were not built as stormwater management facilities. And this happened throughout Prince George's County in many places. The county is going through an MSF4 program to actually come back and retrofit some of these existing ponds that are out there. So to that fact, we met about 4 or 5 months ago with DPI, Prince George's County Department of Permittance and Enforcement, because they will be the entity, as Christian mentioned, reviewing the stormwater management for the project. And we were able to obtain as-built drawings showing how what you see here on this slide is the main pond by the clubhouse as exists. And this main pond is taking a lot of drainage for the community surrounded. But this is not a stormwater management pond. It doesn't have a proper outflow. So in this case, working with our client, he's going to take the lead and actually retrofit the pond, be able to provide one year, 10-year, and 100-year control at the stormwater management and provide a control outflow structure. So now, this is stormwater management for the neighborhood, not for us, for the neighborhood, in the pond that is located in the property. So that's very important. The stormwater management concept and final plans for the site will be reviewed by Prince George's County DPI. And we're going to, there are other ponds within the community. Some of them are irrigation ponds, but we're going to, as part of the stormwater management concept and design drawings, we're going to study them to ensure that they have safe and adequate drainage and outflows. Moving into floodplain, unless somebody, and we can go back, the 100-year floodplain. And this slide is describing kind of the process that we have to go to obtain a FEMA map amendment. That's the ultimate goal. And in the next slide, I'm going to show you at least 2 projects that personally in Prince George's County I've been involved, to give you an idea, but to start. It's too early in the project, but my client say, Alex, let's move forward and let's prepare the 100-year study right now. We proposed and did hydraulic computations for the 100-year control, the existing conditions, and a proposed mitigation for the project. This has been already submitted to the city of Laurel. When the city does the review, we're still going to have to go to Prince George's County DPI, that as part of the stormwater management concept, they're going to review it. We're going to have to go to MDE, and we're going to have to go to FEMA to get a conditional letter of modified amendment. When the site is ultimately developed, and we have been able to do the compensatory storage, that's when we actually get the modified map. And one highlight, very important from Bill, is not just going to change the map for our property, but several of the homes nearby. This is the existing condition. You go to FEMA maps. FEMA recently did a map, and this is what it shows. You can see not just our property, but throughout the neighborhood. And with our proposed study, which is under review, this is the ultimate goal. This will be the new FEMA map. All the mitigation will happen on site. That's very important. We're going to do a compensatory on site, not off site. We're not going to bring dirt from outside to raise the site above 2 feet. We have to do this. We have to go 2 feet above the floodplain elevation. That's something that Prince George's County is asking us to do. Couple of examples, some of them that people know about it. If you look at this map, you see 495 and 193. This is where Greenbelt Station, the metro station, is located, and currently Greenbelt Station, a property that is developed with 1,000 units, is being located. And you can see in this map, the entire property for the most is in the 100-year and the 500-year flood zone. This is the new map, and this is what it looks like. So we went in a similar shape. We did compensatory storage. We were able to create some wetland mitigation areas, and now we have an active community. So this is about a 10-year time frame when it happened. And most recently, we just obtained approval. This is the West Hyattsville Metro Station, located in Prince George's County as well. What you can see in red is the property surrounding the station, where you see in the dark gray areas the mapping of FEMA for the 100-year storm. This is an aerial overview, and this is the plan that has been recently approved by Park and Planning, MDE, and now FEMA to modify the flood. So I think that's to illustrate like how it's done, some example. As Madam Chair, sometimes you just want to drive by and see it. This is a way to do it. And with that, I'm going to bring it back to Bill, but wishing everybody happy holidays.
I do want to just wrap up by highlighting a couple points. First of all, we've had a couple meetings with civic representatives in the area already. As you heard from Christian, there's a proposal to do another neighborhood meeting, whether it's here or on site. We have space on site we could host it. We're happy to do that. And again, we see this as the first step. It merely allows us to really move forward if we're successful, and then prepare the detailed plans. We've shown you, the layout may end up looking quite like that. And I want to say that it's not because, I'm not saying that it's illustrative because we don't think we can do it and we're going to switch it out. It's that we know we can't ask for approval of it right now. These are layouts that have been looked at from an engineering standpoint. We have to further engineer it and do it. These are units that we've been in discussion with builders. We know we can do these units. So this is the vision for the project. I do want to pause and say, I understand that when you develop a big parcel that's been open space, acting as a golf course for many years, that's a significant issue in the neighborhood. We acknowledge that. We are trying to continue to dialogue with the neighborhood to hear their concerns, find middle ground where we can find middle ground, and to also improve conditions out there, both in terms of the FEMA maps and the runoff now, by creating stormwater management. But this FEMA map issue is fairly important because I understand from some of our conversations that flood designation on the existing units is very expensive. So we're looking, and you saw the slide, that we can, when we bring our site out of the floodplain, not higher than the other subdivisions, we cannot drain into their property. That part of the review will require there's positive drainage from their property through our property. We have to pick up the drainage that comes off the existing development and incorporate it into our stormwater management. But we will create an area that will be out of the floodplain for our development, and then the lower parts of the property will still remain in the floodplain. We have trails in that area. We're allowed to do that. One thing that wasn't mentioned is that we would hope that we could work with the neighborhood that this trail network is over 2 miles all told, with exercise trails and other activities, maybe a dog park, other activities we could work into it, would be linked to their trail networks in appropriate locations. That's a coordination thing we would have to do. We don't want to presume it, but if it's something the neighborhood wants to consider, we're happy to do that. And we think it would make for a better community. Again, the review process will require, on the environmental side, detailed engineering review by your Department of Public Works. I believe some comments came in just today. They will be taken into account as we move forward, and then reviewed by the county for stormwater management, and then by MDE, and ultimately FEMA. Not a shovel of dirt will move. Not one house or foundation will be started until that FEMA process and the MDE review is completed to the satisfaction of the experts involved, with your staff involved, and with continued communication with you and the community. We are also want to make sure I mentioned that in the plan where we showed the entrance drive, you saw some parking there. We're retaining parking for the city's pool facility and parking for the office building that exists, which is not part of our property. So we've looked at that. We are continuing to take in information. We continue to learn, and we hope to have many more meetings with the community and be back in front of you, hopefully with a site plan someday. I would like to wrap up by thanking you, but also thanking Christian for all of her help on this staff report, coordinating the various agencies that have had to comment. We appreciate that assistance. We are here to answer any questions, and if there's an opportunity to sum it at the end, we'd be happy to do that. Thank you.
If you'll wait right there. Before I go to those signed up, questions for the applicant?
I've got one.
I have
go ahead.
several. Go ahead.
I have a question on the FEMA map changes for the other locations that you mentioned as examples. I was just curious, how long did that process take?
Very good question. The process typically takes 12 months or so from the moment we begin.
From the time you get your engineering?
Correct. So pretty much with the plan we submitted to the city, it's going to take about 12 months to go through all the review agencies. And that's to get a conditional letter of modified amendment. You don't get the actual map change until the site is actually graded above the floodplain. And for that, you have to certify with surveying that the elevations are what they are.
Okay. And just to follow up along this, I read somewhere, and I didn't see the actual engineering, and I wouldn't understand it anyhow, but there's berming along, is there going to be a berm built?
Sure, and maybe we can collectively answer. There are existing berms that were put in probably as some kind of project with the city at some point. Some folks here may know that better than I. And Public Works has asked us to make sure we look at that with the floodplain study. We think our floodplain study works with that, but we have to go back to them and make sure we understand.
So you're not proposing more berms, it's the berms that are already there?
Right.
Okay.
That's right. But we have to recognize they exist.
And as long as I've got the floor here, was there any consideration, and I know it's not your property, but there's that dead end, I don't know the name of the road. You've got the one that goes off and towards the city's driving ranges and all of that. Yeah, the one that goes up to the north and west.
I was going to say, that's going to be my question is find an entrance or an exit on 198 too.
I mean, is there a way, I don't know, so is the impediment to that Bear Creek? Trying to find a safe and
we've looked at
affordable thing to get across Bear Creek?
We've looked at that, and I know one of the questions is it crosses city-owned land.
Well, we got 4 votes here already.
And we would be happy to look at that through the site plan process and the subdivision process. I think it's a good suggestion. We'd have to look at feasibility. There may be a Bear Creek issue. Yeah. There may be, whether the neighborhood wants it there.
I understand.
But I think it's a very good.
It's something to at least throw in the hopper.
Yes, sir.
The other one is, the city, and you've probably heard this from other folks, but the city's been trying for years to connect bike paths and things like that around the city. And I know that's all a coordination thing, but you'd at least be amenable to that, to tie in those bike paths?
At the work session, the mayor asked that question, and we specifically said we've looked at the master plan trail master plan. We would be happy to connect our trail if there's a linkage to the city's trail. I also think there's a pathway more than a trail on the other side of Bear Creek. We've been told whether that can be somehow worked into the city's plan or not.
I mean, the big impediment would get across 198, yes. But that's on us to figure out, or on the city to figure out. But as long as you guys are at least open to the idea, I think we're all in the same mindset here. We're trying to create. We don't want to create an enclave, right? We want to tie, this kind of development and the one that came in front of us earlier, I think sometimes these things tend to get enclaved off. And I think the more we can tie it in and make this thing work, obviously a major development, but to make it all work as part of a whole is a good thing for the community. So I appreciate it. That's all the questions I have.
Thank you. Mr. Welford.
Madam Chair, thank you. The only people that I see that's affected the most out of the whole plan are the single-family homes along Greenview Drive. So on PUD H there, that will receive 20 to 32 single-family detached homes. What determines that those 12 extra, 20 to 32, what determines how many? Will it be 20 or will it be 32?
Well, we don't know yet.
What
because
determines that? Why can't you?
It could be partially the mix of the unit type. It could be when we find out the final engineering of what fits best within that. It could be based upon feedback from this commission, from staff. We're trying to maximize. You're talking about PUD B, is that right? Or are you talking about
H.
B?
PUD H that comes up behind PUD B.
Yes, right. What we did there was to make sure that those are single-family units. So although the ones, you see the little finger that comes up next to the single families that exist, that's one row of houses. The reason the number is bigger is that it goes back into the project deeper. So I think there would be consideration of similar sized lots next to the single families. It wouldn't be that we put more houses right there. We would be pulling them back into where it balloons out deeper into the site. But we just haven't laid it out, so we gave ranges. We think it will be, I think I can say with certainty, it will be less than 450 units. We just don't know exactly where that mix is going to be.
To follow up on Mr. Welford's question, though, and one of the questions that was raised, your placement of a 3-story townhouse versus a 2-story home, backing up to those that are currently backed up, those that may have paid the premium to be looking out over green space. We understand there's some, separation, but is that something that's open to, instead of them looking out at sounds like what we're saying, it would even be looking at garages, because you're going to do garages potentially in the back, which again, from the front is very nice. But if that's what you're backing up to.
We heard that comment, and obviously we're digesting it when we get to the site plan, but I do want to mention that the finger of H that comes up are single families that wrap along where the single families existing come up to the edge of our property. As you get into what is B, you have the wooded part of the city's open space and pool facility. So we didn't put townhouses right next to the lot lines. So
I missed that part of it.
But we heard the comment, and we can think some more.
Okay. Thank you.
Do you have any idea what a starting price on a single-family home will be?
I'm told that the singles would be mid-5s and the townhouses would be over 4.
And I can tell you that those that are over 4 at the south, out west side are almost all sold, aren't they? They are all sold, and those were all over the mid-400s. Yeah. So to what someone said earlier, I believe the comment that Laurel has become a very desirable place to live. My question and comment is, again, and I respect that traffic studies are done. I know I had some experience with how they're done and where they're done based on some of my facilities and background with the Postal Service years ago. But looking at 400 houses, and the average, I think, nowadays is the 2 to 2.3 or whatever cars, and understanding the 30%, my image of this, and I love the slides, the pictures, and I love all of that, but my image, and I go in and out of that property to my sister works within the building, and my parents' doctors are within the building that's not the property in discussion. It just reminds me of Ocean City before Route 90 was there. It's that you've got that one street going out. And so while we're just looking at the potentially even 500 to 900 cars in this new development, you've got all of the Patuxent and all of that just coming into that. So I would love some discussion or some hard look at something that would come out on 198. Again, I tried to see whatever elevation maps I could look at and driving around through the Dutch Farmers Market and things like that. But now that we've got the property all the way over to the Bear Branch Creek, I think that may also enhance the current residents' ability to get out a separate way and things like that. So again, just this image of this enclave in the back with nowhere to get out except, if somebody I think talked about the police coming and knocking on the door, if the dam's going to break, and again, that, I know you're going to mitigate a lot, but I'm thinking of the hurricane evacuation route, trying to get just that many people up to 197. So I would just ask, look whatever you can, and I would ask city staff to try and look at, what a great opportunity to use 197 and 198. So.
There are things that we can look at. Obviously, we're not at that stage yet.
Right.
Hearing the feedback, and I think hopefully it shows a little bit of faith that we heard the comment about the fact that there's no right turn lane off of 197, and that causes a backup. And we've looked at that very quickly and put that on the table. We can't solve every traffic problem. The traffic analysis looks at the issues that are related to capacity by APF requirements, and so we looked at that, and that's what's recommended in the traffic study. These other issues are really what I call operational and quality of life, circulation issues, and we're willing to keep looking at it. I can't tell you that we know what the answers are or that we can pay for everything, but I can tell you that we'll continue to look at things and work with the city and with the neighborhood, and maybe together we can work with state highways and find solutions. But we hear that comment and we understand it.
And one other question that I would like to confirm or better understand is I did hear about and there was much discussion in the city when the floodplain changed in that area, and I know it impacted the homeowners association and the special assessment. And one of the better things that I heard, or potentially good things for the homeowners there, would be that all of the rest of their homes that are in there would come out.
Yeah.
Now, would that be a commitment that when you go to FEMA, you're not just looking at your property? And then I guess my question would be from one of the homeowners is, if you're coming up, if you have looked into the fact that would they then be able to stop, not necessarily a special assessment, that's all within their fiduciary, but the requirement to carry that type of flood insurance if you get FEMA's approval?
I think that the answer is that the reason they have to get that flood insurance is because the FEMA map says they're in the floodplain.
Correct.
If that's changed and they're no longer in the floodplain, that should be corrected.
But through your process, they would incur no expenses in this FEMA process? It would just, is that correct? That's what I wanted to verify whether they needed.
But I do want to say that we'll need, obviously we can submit whatever we want on our property.
Right.
Because my client owns the property. We would need cooperation from the homeowners associations in the city, and probably a joint effort with the city's engineering folks to say we want the existing maps revised as well. But we would prepare the maps and the engineering to go with it.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for the applicant? Mr. Smalls, any questions, sir? No. Thank you. Thank you very much. I have quite a few. I would like to start with those that have not spoken, but I am committed to get to everyone that has signed up. Nina McDaniel, Patuxent Greens. Oh, you spoke. Nina, I'm sorry. Can I ask you to, maybe I don't have anyone. Cindy Russell, Nina. Dr. Robert E. Jackson. Maybe everybody is already speaking. Welcome.
Hearing me, I do have a dry throat right now. I'm sorry. I have a kind of unique experience for me. I've worked 40 years in the siting business, of siting critical facilities. I work for federal government as a regulator in critical facilities, including nuclear waste and nuclear power plants.
Welcome, Mr. Jackson. Could you please give us your address for the record?
I'm on 14117 Greenview Drive.
Thank you very much.
I'm one of the houses that abuts the 18th tee box, where I am, and I've seen some of you out there walking around. I appreciate the work that consultants have done so far. I worked as a consultant for 40 years, still do so. The FEMA issue is the primary issue from my perspective. I've been there 5 years. We've been evacuated twice at 2 o'clock in the morning. Not due to FEMA issues, but due to WSSC issues. And I think that's one of the things that the applicant needs to decide is FEMA does not have control over the reservoir. And WSSC has indicated to the city and the mayor it's not a water control problem. They're going to release water when they want to. And that's flooded the city numerous times. The other thing is FEMA is now leaning strongly toward 250 flood. And I just worked on a major dam project where we worked for the 100-year. At the last minute, they said, no, because of the recent events in Houston, in New Orleans, we're now requiring it 200. So, not opposed to the development if it's done properly with the right buffers and things like that. So I think there has to be some administrative agreement with WSSC over this project, because it's not the natural flooding from rain that's doing it. It's the opening of the gates.
It's the opening of the gates.
And I've been there during Sandy. I've been told by longtime residents of Laurel that worked on clearing the land for the golf course that there was up to 6 to 8 feet of water over that area during Camille. I think it was Camille, 1969. And as a result, the problem there is the clay layers. I noticed the drilling machines that have been out there. The problem with there is there's no drainage, natural drainage. Now, maybe with the new floodplain management. I worked for Greenhorn America for 20 years, know the name. And they were the primary real estate development company in Prince George's County for 50 years. Mr. Mara is a good friend of mine before he passed. The past evacuations have been a problem. The problem is the entrance to the neighborhood is in the flood zone. So as you try to get out, you can't get through there. Now, with the need mitigation efforts, I'm sure that will be impacted. And I think that's one of the key things, the traffic and the entrance area being raised enough, mitigated. The other thing that's a key thing for siting critical facilities, aesthetics. All of the buffer and natural areas here are pushed up against the existing development homes, the parkland. I know why, because the rest of the area is flooded. That's where the open land is. So what I would look to is if in the siting activity, there can't be a greater buffer put west side, south side, pushing that a little bit more over toward the riverside. That would create a natural buffer. I'm sure they plan vegetation. The intersection comment is it's not the coming in from that direction. It's the crossing over. Coming southbound, turning into the... I pick my grandchild up every afternoon at 3 o'clock and come across that intersection. School buses coming the other direction. It's a blind crossover. Totally blind. The intersection has to be either closed there, turning, make a U-turn further south, come back. But crossing there, there's been fatalities. 4 to 5 fatalities in that area in the past 5 years.
Yes. Yeah.
Between Clubhouse Drive and 198. Some of it pedestrian, so I'll put that there. So those are just a few of the issues I had down there, but the FEMA issue to me is the key one. I was one of the houses impacted by the flood standard.
Okay.
The other thing is the drainage that exists there now has not been maintained. So there has to be a commitment to maintenance by the town, by the city, Laurel, to keep the flood mitigation efforts active. So the drains there are plugged, they've silted in, and the natural drainage isn't working. So I was there in Sandy, the water came up to our backyard and stayed there for 2 weeks, okay? Never went down. Doesn't mean it can't be built up and mitigated, so I'm in agreement with that. So I have a professional, I'm a PG in the state of Florida, work on flooding and siting issues and safety. So appreciate your time.
Thank you very much for coming out.
Consideration.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, I don't believe I have anybody signed up that has not yet spoken, so I'll go in order of the sign-ups. Cheryl Peenham, welcome back.
Thank you. Should I state my name and address again?
Please.
My name is Cheryl Peenham, 14207 Summit Lane in Laurel. I am on the Patuxent Glen side, single-family homes. I'm also the vice president of the HOA. As I stated before, I'm definitely in favor of the development of the houses. I know that there has been a concern within our development that we as a board have not been committed enough to having meetings and discussions, and I want to definitely say that that is not the case. We have actually met with Mr. Cohen and Mr. Ship in a private board meeting to have discussions so that we can take this back to our community and say, we've heard your concerns, we know what you guys are saying to us, we've addressed this, and these are the responses. So just to highlight on the meeting that we've had with them, the biggest concern for a lot of the residents is the FEMA floodplain. It does affect a great deal of the people on Greenview into that cul-de-sac. We have been reassured that, and I know that you have already addressed the situation, that in order for us as an owner, or even as the condo, from my understanding, we have to spend thousands and thousands of dollars with a consultant, an engineer, with the city, and just legislation to try to get our house out of that flood zone, or we have to pay for the flood insurance.
Right.
And we have been assured that they will be taking on that financial cost in order to rezone us so that that does not fall on us, that it does fall onto them. And once we are brought out, it will no longer be an issue. The traffic, again, I know I hear it over and over and over again. As they've already stated, they have already pre-done a traffic study from 198 down to Contee. It was addressed again on top of this traffic study. Coming southbound from 198, turning, it is a blind turn. There have been major fatalities there. There doesn't go a month that goes by, there's not at least one accident. And going northbound, turning right into the development, traffic does back up. Again, you've seen the slide where they've proposed the right-hand turn. I have also brought up to their attention, because of the left-hand turn, to redo another study to look at it again, to maybe have the timing of the traffic light where the left-hand turn lasts a little bit longer. And they have definitely agreed to pursue other traffic studies and to see what can be done about the traffic flow, because it is essentially one way in, one way out, especially for those of us in the single-family homes.
Right.
If a tree were to fall or an accident happens, we're deadlocked. We can't get out. So, that is a major concern for us. The layout of the development, having it being aesthetically pleasing for the landowners that are there to not lose their vision and what they're in that house for. They bought their house for a reason. Again, we've been assured that based on their plans and getting approval, that where the tennis courts and everything and the pool are, that is owned by the city, and that's where it stops. And there's not much of a walking path past that, so they're going to try to keep the townhouses that end and the single families to kind of keep the flow going, regardless of however their layout plans is. They don't want anybody to lose that divisional appeal. Lastly, there was also a major concern regarding the traffic flow as far as pedestrians, the increased presence of people, the increased potential of crime activity, suspicious activity, things like that because of a new development coming in. Because their proposal is to tie into walking paths from neighborhood to neighborhood. They don't want to put a walking path where it goes in between somebody's house. They want to stick with existing paths and stuff, which was a big concern for us because we do kind of live in an area that doesn't have another way out. So if something happens, it's especially those down on Greenview and in that cul-de-sac, it's more of a potential for, increased crime. But we've been reassured that, again, with the development, it's kind of a win-win because we now have more eyes, we now have more presence, more traffic coming through to have eyes open with the walking path with people out there.
Can I ask you to summarize? We've got about 6 more people to.
I'm done. I just want to say,
well, I sincerely appreciate you coming out.
A lot of these concerns have been addressed, and multiple conversations are taking place to address neighborhood concerns.
Thank you. And again, the city is committed to that at every step of all of our processes.
Absolutely. And us as the homeowners as well, collaborating with them to make sure that it doesn't end up as, a secular neighborhood.
Thank you. Holly Ulmer. I'm going to start writing the times down. My pen.
And thank you so much.
Thank you. Welcome.
All of you and your presentations. And I live at 9408 Springhouse Lane, K. And I want to say that I have great respect for science and engineers, and I hear the great care with which all of this is being proposed and undertaken and explored. And at the same time, I believe as human beings, there are things we cannot always control despite our most incredible engineering and our best planning as human beings. The fact that the land is requiring significant re-engineering is a flag to me that this piece of land is going to require so much change. There's a big trend these days into trying to take land and use it as it is shaped. I grew up on Long Island, and there's a place there called the Shinnecock Bay Canal. And, I remember coming to Washington, D.C. and hearing the reports talk about this. They dredged the Shinnecock Bay Canal so that fishermen could have access every time Mother Nature refilled it. So I just lift it up and say I'm very concerned that regardless of what FEMA says, and the gentleman talked about 250-year, which some of us believe there's climate change, some of us do not, but clearly the weather patterns are changing somehow. And when we talk about 2 feet, is 2 feet going to be enough? I put it out there because this is an ethical issue. We could create the most beautiful community, and it could all flood. And we talk about flood insurance now. What if people are not paying enough for the flood insurance that they're going to need to replace their property? So my concern is that will the people that buy these units, will they be able to purchase enough flood insurance at the rate they need to truly cover their dwellings? Because for most people, this is their most major investment. So I would encourage everyone to really pause and think, should this land really be developed in this way?
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Nina McDaniel.
Nina McDaniel, and I live on Greenview Drive. I'm happy to go and tell her
That's
about
fine.
this after I'm finished. I have several questions. So I would like to know where we will be able to view some of these public documents, such as the presentation and the traffic study.
That's an excellent question. You, as a citizen of Laurel, may work through with Christian, and before you leave, if you can get their phone number and all of that. All of the information that's received by the city and the materials that we're looking at, those are all available to you. And so you can work with her office as to how to receive that information. You can come in and review information. You can be, I believe, be notified of different things if you'd like to be put on a list. That's an excellent question, and the information is available.
Okay, I don't know who is prepared to answer questions on the traffic study. I was kind of interested to find out that the southern limit was Contee Road, but the northern limit is just up to 198. I feel like that's not exactly representative of the traffic in the area. So I don't know if because I mean, this traffic study is completely arbitrary since there is no definite layout yet, and there will be another one done in the future, but I want to make sure that that is some kind of consideration, that the large, voluminous amount of traffic that comes out of that 2nd Street corridor is taken into account when looking at the 198 intersection.
Thank you.
So, and what the statement they made about that Clubhouse Drive intersection is absolutely true. It's an incredibly dangerous intersection, and if they've done a hypothetical traffic study with conservative estimate numbers, they have done the stacking measurements and see that it's not only going to back up that from the existing turn lanes into the flowing traffic lane, and it's going to back up all the way to the light.
I believe she would be able to come in and view the study in your office. I know that that's a huge document. I don't know whether the applicant
That's fine.
would be.
I used to do traffic engineering for the state of Louisiana. My other question is, we have the existing walking path in the Greenview Park area. If that would be that's going to be tied into walking paths through this new development, will they be taken over to the scenic areas such as the river?
My question, and I would say at this point that would be too early. We have not seen those, but I would ask for your input as to, is that something, you're posing the question, but is that something that you would be saying you would like to see, or that you would like it kept separate? One of the things, as Councilman Smalls had said, is throughout the city we're trying to link the city as the city versus just subdivision by subdivision.
I would absolutely not want the new development to be linked to the walking path for our neighborhood. It's already heavily utilized by people walking their dogs, and that's what it's there for. I think adding a potential of upwards of thousands of people to that area is inadvisable. Although that being said, with the paths that are existing on the golf course for the golf carts that go over to those nice scenic areas, if that part of the golf course is not being developed along this area, I think that would be a nice addition to add that would give a lot of value to not only the new development, but the people who are losing their visual appeal for that green space.
Thank you. And there would be definitely other times that if the project moves forward, that there would be time for that discussion.
All right. My other question is, I've heard, I guess they said the Army Corps has already been out to their site. When the permits from Fish and Wildlife and Army Corps have been completed, will those be publicly available for viewing?
Christian? Yes, they will.
Okay. And I guess none of that can be done until a proper layout has been worked out. I did have a question. I saw that they had open play areas and tot lots. I don't know what the difference in those are. If that's something that has been considered, because we already have existing playgrounds in our neighborhood, so I don't know if they.
The city Parks and Rec would work with them on that. I know that, some are, if throughout the city as a resident, we have different lots, like the lot on Montrose Avenue is Centennial Park, which when you pull up, it tells you, I think, from 5 to 13, whereas at Discovery Park down on Harrison, you have the tots, the 2 to 4, and then you have the others. So it's one of the things we're most proud of in the city are the, so.
All right, well, who do I speak to about getting updates on the report?
You can speak to Christian. She's still after the meeting, or if you want to just give her your name and number to Brooke, then maybe she could follow up. Okay, thank you very much. Okay. Samuel Epps. Welcome back.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, for the record, Samuel Epps, 9431 Trevino Terrace, Laurel, Maryland. I'm in the villages of Patuxent Green. My condo, or I think it's my house, my home is on the 10th hole of the golf course. I've been, I concur with a lot of what many of the individuals said around sort of what I call mitigation issues, mitigation in the water, traffic. But there's some other things that were not brought up here. I'm very concerned, what is this in terms of planning, in terms of if you have the maximum houses there, let's just say hypothetically 300 homes there, right? And let's do a third each, 100 students going to elementary school.
Have you seen the city staff report?
Yeah,
okay.
Those numbers were on last year's numbers.
I was going to say, did those numbers make sense to you? Because
they're last year's numbers.
Continue. I'm sorry. I just wanted to make sure that you had seen, because I was part of our report. Thank you.
And even if there's 100 additional high school students going to law, I don't need to even look at that report to know that they're already in trailers. So, in terms of in terms of additional schools or additional stress on that here in Laurel is a concern of mine. But I want you all to indulge me on what I think is in terms of process. This process has seemed rushed, and I know probably the developers and the other side said we've probably been working on this for years, and certainly it was said that the property was bought in July. We're standing here in December now asking for something that is never been done on this PUD site. And I think for process, and yes, they've met with leaders from both sides. I know they met with our leadership, but there has not been a community dialogue about this on both sides. And I know that publicly. And I know you say you want to do one in January, but it's probably 4 days before the actual council vote. And so I certainly would ask you all to indulge in that this issue would serve and do a continuance on this until the neighbors get a chance to talk to the developer and figure this out. So I hope that as the planning commission here, you would take that strongly and do a continuance 30, 60 days, and then we come back and talk about this after the community has been able to talk to the developer on this.
I thank you very much. And just in terms of process, one of the things I think I most appreciate about what we do is, in a sense, the lengthy process. And I was with you before when I called and said, help me understand, what are we voting on? Because this is huge. And the neo-traditional matter was a big matter. The only thing tonight that what we voted just previously was to say, yes, it's a departure. The thing that is before us this evening is a map amendment. It's not 400 townhouses, it's not houses, it's to say, does the Planning Commission agree, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that this developer has the rights to come to ask for something. And so that is right, the part that we're at. And I don't know whether this may be your first involvement with us, and if so, welcome. But we've been pretty aggressive recently about changing what
solar
some
panels.
People wanted and things like that. So we've got, in my mind, quite a long process before we would ever say, yes, that's how many streets, that's how many houses, or anything like that. So, but I certainly appreciate your point, because again, the process is not a fast process, and we need to take our time. So thank you very much.
Thank you,
Madam Chair, if I could just
Mr.
make one
Smalls.
comment. Sam,
One of the things that could certainly take place here tonight as part of the commission's recommendation to the council, they could list any number of conditions or suggestions to their recommendation. One of those could be, if the commission decides, would be some time frame that it recommends to the council. So, you know, there are a number of things in this recommendation that this commission can do, and then it falls to the council for our final decisions on how we move forward with it. But, you know, I certainly would say that it's in the purview of this body to put some conditions to their recommendation.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Those are all of the signatures that I have. Yes, please. Yes, for people, if you would please, actually, let me get, if you would actually state and spell your name and the address so that I can put that down.
Yes. My name is Odessa Phillip, Odessa, last name Phillip, Phillip.
Thank you.
I live at 9407 Nicholas Lane in the Villages at the Greens of Patuxent. I did speak last evening on this issue, so I won't repeat what I said last evening. However, there were a couple of points that I thought were worthy
Because
of
not
bringing back
everyone
up,
here
because
saw
you
last
guys did not all
night.
hear or
Right.
see what I said last night. So kind of in the bigger sense, I am a civil engineer registered in the state of Maryland. I have worked as an engineer for apparently 20 years, although I'm still in denial. I do own my own engineering consulting firm here in Laurel. I do work partially out of my home. I also have an office space in Columbia, Maryland. I am working on a separate project and came to this body under a different matter for the improvements being made to Upper and Lower Laurel Lake under stormwater management regulations in partnership with Prince George's County. And so I'm coming from a little bit of that perspective. I'm also coming from the perspective as a planner that has done interactions with other planning commissions in the county and in the state of Maryland in other jurisdictions. I want to go back to kind of Sam's point on process in terms of the time limit. The 6 months between the acquisition of the property and today, and the hope that the commission will make a recommendation that will allow, as part of public process in general, you generally don't try to have a community meeting between Christmas and the first week of January. It's generally does not feel to the community like you're trying to have a partnership. And I think that is more the vein in which Sam is speaking, and that would be the vein in which I would be speaking. While I understand procedurally that there's a long period of time between where you are now and where you're going, I think it is something that is paramount to our community, property owners who've lived here for 17 years like myself, some for less and some for more, who were here during the hurricane, who were here during the other storms, Sandy, and any other activity where you're being evacuated from your home, that we want to feel like it's at least a cooperative process. So that was at least part one. Last evening, I did have an opportunity to speak with the gentlemen that were here, the attorney and the owner of the site, and have a feeling that they are willing to have some collaboration with the community. The thing that most concerned me when I looked at the initial sketches was that the closest area is 44 feet of buffer on the townhome side. And 44 feet is, while it's a buffer, it's really not a lot of buffer when you were looking out over a golf course. And so those types of things, I think people in my community would be very concerned about. 44 feet doesn't really seem like a lot of buffer. And as you mentioned, especially if you're looking into the back of another property where you've now you've gone from looking at something larger. So I just wanted to put that in terms of concept of process in front of you. The other thing that was raised during the conversation was about the intersection and the intersection study. I understood the limits going from Contee up to 198. That actually does make some sense if you're thinking about major arterials and roadways in the system and the engineering that's required. But I do think having had that conversation with the community prior to making the recommendation might have led to a slightly different outcome. And that again goes back to process and how you could collaboratively work with the community so that when you're coming up with ideas, at least we've heard them before. You'd have a lot less, I think there would be a lot less instinctive opposition to statements made if that collaboration had happened. I do, again, like I said, believe that they're very open to that, and I think that we should be able to have that type of conversation. But there are other things besides the tangibles that we already think about. The last one is going back to the FEMA question. The recognition that coming out of the floodplain could have a huge impact. Our entire community was not given a special assessment, just so you understand.
Okay.
Instead, we had an increase of our condo fees that is long lasting. So that was one of those, they go up and they never go back down. And the resale of our properties would be greatly impacted by the now $300 condo fee that we're paying. So I just want to put those into a little bit more tangible, $300 a month on top of your mortgage. And we're now trying to sell a house that's not valued at the $400,000 that the new properties would be coming into. So those are some concerns that we have that are a little bit different than some that have been raised to date. I think people in the community have named and raised every other issue that I thought was important. So I just wanted to put that for you for consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
If I could, before you go,
Yes.
So on the process question, so my understanding of what the map amendment does is it lets them go start to do site plans. So I'm trying to understand, I mean, are you opposed to any map amendment? Do you want to kill this process right now, or do you want to continue the dialogue?
I'm open to continuing the dialogue. I think my concern is that if they start doing site assessment, the feeling is that it has moved beyond us before we got a chance to really understand it.
It might be the feeling, but the truth is, all we're doing is saying, go to the next step.
Yes.
So I'm trying to understand the delay of the map amendment in this case, because unless you just want it to stay a golf course, which I don't think economically is going to happen. For us to find for the map amendment is to, in effect, the city saying or recommending to the council, yeah, let's let these folks go and engage with the community and go to the next step. That's what I'm just trying to understand. I mean, I don't see us, if we deny the map amendment, then at least then it has to go to the council and they can overturn us.
So I guess my question it was a question of you have approve or deny, but you can't have approve with conditions.
The conditions can be, go talk to the community.
Okay.
Right, which happens naturally as part of the site plan, concept planning. I'm just trying to understand. Mr. Epps made the same point, and I get that you want to. I'm all for having as much engagement with the community as possible. But as far as the question in front of us is, do we approve the map amendment? If we don't approve the map amendment, it goes to the council. The council can decide what they're going to do. But nothing happens if the map amendment doesn't get approved.
So my statement was actually approved with condition.
Okay.
Which is what that was actually.
And the conditions you'd like
would be to have to engage the community, but I think a little bit more specifically, because when you tell a developer just years of experience, engage with the community, that is the homeowners association. That is not the people who actually live there.
And not in the city. I can tell you, in the city.
That's the condition in my opinion.
Appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
And Rick, I thank you for saying that, because that's what you did it much more eloquently than I did about approving of the map amendment, is to say that we have a developer in the city, and I totally agree with you about the city's January 8th timing. But again, I believe if we approve it, and if it goes to the council, this large engagement already from the public, and again, many of us concerned with the traffic and the different parts, I think that the developer and the city are all hearing about, let's make sure all of the pieces have the time. So in a sense, this developer has brought us, as you've heard, all of these pictures of houses, all these things, a traffic study it could have just been a developer coming saying to get the amendment. So this discussion is starting, but it is long way from being finished. So thank you.
Fair. Thank you very much.
Mr. Drunuga. 9:47. No, you're not.
Good evening. Thomas Dernoga, D-E-R-N-O-G-A, 15611 Strawn Drive, Laurel. I'm also a business owner here in the city. I wasn't paying any attention to this case, and I don't live near the property. But some of the residents contacted me late Thursday. They just been to a work session and were not real pleased with how things went, and asked if I had some knowledge, since I used to do zoning work for civic and environmental groups. So I tried to put together some thoughts very quickly over the weekend. Had a lot of trouble finding information online with regard to this property. I know it's late, so I'm going to try to go through it quickly, but there's a lot of stuff to unload here. First of all, the process question, just as a point of reference, the city of Laurel provides for, I think, a 15-day notice period of publication. I know certain, like the HOA was involved earlier, but apparently a lot of the actual homeowners were affected, felt kind of blindsided in terms of when they got a notice and when they became aware, and the ability to put together analysis, detailed analysis in a short period of time over Thanksgiving holiday period is not very good. Now, from my experience, and I've done zoning work in almost 10 jurisdictions in Maryland, the 2-week notice period is the shortest. It's legal, assuming it was done correctly, but it's incredibly short. And I think it's a very, very unfair advantage to the citizens not to have the opportunity to really analyze what's going on. Because I learned about this on Thursday, I asked a friend to drop into the City Hall and pick up a copy of the file on Friday. And the City Hall in the afternoon was closed for a holiday party.
Which was publicly noticed.
Not criticizing having a holiday party, but it's awful tough to get information. There's nothing that I could find online. So there's a process issue that I think, as quickly as this is moving forward, and it is rather relatively quickly compared to what goes on in other jurisdictions, you would hope that the developer would say, maybe we can move that January 8th meeting date to give it an opportunity to sit down and talk. Now, all my comments are meant to be respectful. I have a different viewpoint, Ms. Bettman and Mr. Wilson. When you say it's only a map amendment, that's missing the point. This is a rezoning. A map amendment is a rezoning. And a rezoning is a major case. And there's a lot that goes into a rezoning. And yes, it's the first step, but it's the first step that decides we're going to move forward.
But that is why we've asked the question of each person, what they feel. For example, was it a departure from the PUD? And are you approving, are you saying to us that you are approving of the map amendment or what? So that's...
I understand your position. I'm taking the position, from having done a lot of zoning cases, that a zoning map amendment is a major issue. Folks that I've talked to feel like they haven't had the time to analyze, and particularly because there's so many moving parts, that in a 2 weeks notice, in a 1 month period between hearings, is that fair to them? I'm just conveying to you that they don't think it is. I would also question, once again respectfully, the zoning process. When I looked at the PUD zone, because normally if you have a rezoning, it's a change of mistake, and then it changes the character of the neighborhood or mistake, which is one way of doing it, or type of zone. This is not that type of zone. This is more of a floating zone, comprehensive design zone, and you look at criteria. Well, there's no criteria in the city zoning ordinance. The only criteria is that the mayor and city council like it. That in and of itself, I think, is a problem with the city ordinance. We can't fix it.
I was just going to say, Tom, you are very familiar with the zoning authority that the city of Laurel has. And we're very proud of this commission and listening to the citizens and all of that. So I agree with the timing. I agree with all of that. Our notice periods and all of that. Again, and we do not disagree with you that this is a major, major issue, and we are taking that very seriously. Can I ask you if you would please just tell us if you're for or against, or what we can do to
But what I was trying to do, and I apologize, was to put on the record a legal objection to the process. And that's all. It's disrespectful.
Thank you.
I make it, move on. One of the concerns the big concern that people have is the floodplain issue. And as an environmentalist, I'm very concerned about the floodplain.
Are you retained by anyone for making this legal objection? Because that's not, I mean, I'm
Let's be
not,
clear. I'm a private citizen representing myself.
but within the city of Laurel?
Anyone. Pardon me?
We don't have our city attorney. All right. Okay.
I represent no one. I'm not allowed to represent anybody. I'm just a citizen who came in to raise some concerns. The floodplain issue, I pulled a number of articles on flooding in Laurel, but I'm not going to go to that. I'll try to be quick here. Found an interesting article today from 538.com. It goes back to the August floods with Houston. Houston had 3 500-year floods within a very short period of time. And as was pointed out by one of the other witnesses, that the theme is looking at a 250-year floodplain issue. So we're talking about altering the 100-year floodplain map for this area when you actually have to question whether 100-year floodplain is an appropriate measure. The 538 article it's titled, "It's Time to Ditch the Concept of 100-Year Floods." Part of the argument is there's actually not, in most cases, 100 years worth of data. And the more recent data shows that we're getting major floods at a much more rapid clip. There's a question of, are we going to alter the land to the degree that they want to alter it? They have a lot of engineering thoughts about how they're going to go about it, but that's going to require a lot of disturbance of that area. The area is filled with wetlands. It's obviously a lot of floodplain, or it's all estimated floodplain. That disturbance is going to create erosion into the Patuxent River. The city's signed on to the Patuxent River Agreement. I did not see in the staff report any discussion of the Patuxent River Agreement. There wasn't any real discussion of erosion and those types of things. We'll deal with that later. We need to approve the map amendment to get to later. In terms of the traffic study, it's not. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Hello, my name
Welcome.
is Kelsey Eustace. I live at 14224 Greenview Drive. I apologize for not signing up. I was across the hall at the Laurel Arts Council meeting until 8 p.m. Otherwise, I would have signed up. And I'm a homeowner and I stated my address. I would like to say that the flooding concerns me a lot. I feel like I've tried to do research on the internet about the flooding and my neighborhood, and I really haven't been able to find anything. I'm not an expert on flooding. So it's difficult for me to say either way because I just don't know how the flooding will affect me or my home or my neighbors. In regard to flooding, if we need to have an evacuation, having one way in and one way out, I mean, there's two ways out, but they're right next to each other, highly concerns me as well. I really appreciated the suggestion to look into a second entrance and exit. I think that would be a great idea. What if there is a fire or a flood and everyone has to leave? It only makes sense to have a second entrance and exit. Again, reiterating what my fellow neighbors have said, the left turn from Laurel Bowie Road when you're turning through the intersection into the neighborhood is a problem. Adding a right turn lane sounds great, it'll help the traffic flow, but that's not the main problem. The main problem is turning left into the community, and I think that needs to be reinvestigated further.
Excuse me, turning left into the community, you mean going south on 190?
Yes.
Okay.
When you have to
That's what I
go
thought,
through
so
the
coming
intersection,
across.
the blind turn.
I just wanted to.
If I could ask, somebody had mentioned earlier, and I thought about it for 2 seconds, but to close that cutover. In other words, you just can't turn left there. Would that be good or bad? That was a suggestion I heard.
I saw a lot of reaction when that was suggested.
I think having the turn signal activate more frequently would be very helpful. If it's congested, I wait for the turn signal, and then people behind me, they keep honking. They give me the finger. They try to go around.
Welcome to Maryland.
I mean, I just ignore them, but I'm not going to put my life or other people's lives in danger trying to turn when I can't see.
So is that, I got a question for staff. Is that our light or
No,
the
it's Prince George's Town.
state light? Whose light is that?
State of Maryland, isn't it?
State of Maryland's light? Okay.
Do you want to ask her your question?
On the question asked about linking the trails, I think that's a great idea. I enjoy walking, and I would like to share the trails if I could also share the new community's trails if the new community is built. I also hear talks of a meeting between the developers and the neighborhood. When will this meeting be, and how will I be notified about the meeting?
That's an excellent question. We've done postcards before and public notice and things like that. The point was raised that sometimes we only communicate with the HOA. Because there is so much community involvement and there is obviously difference of opinion even among the boards of the different things, can the city commit to postcards in the neighborhood?
Well, how I envisioned the community being contacted is similar to how when applications are filed, they're supposed to send out notifications about the hearing dates. So what I recommend is that the community, if you're an owner or if you live in close proximity, that notices will be sent out to the community regarding the meeting.
How?
Via mail?
To
Via
all
mail?
the addresses?
That's how I envisioned it. So everybody will know about it.
Okay. So who would do that?
We have to coordinate with the applicant.
Okay.
I'll talk with Mr. Cohen.
With addresses and everything.
Excuse me?
With addresses. And that would be certified mail like you send out to all neighboring.
No, you don't want certified. Not this time of year, you don't want certified.
I would propose regular mail because there has been some concern that people aren't picking up the mail. They're getting returned, so I would recommend regular mail. But also for anyone who's here in attendance, you're more than welcome to contact me to sign up to be notified of things, email, contact the staff about plans regarding anything according to the project.
Thanks.
Madam Chair. To staff, Christian, couldn't they hold those kind of meetings in the Cabana room over there and put a city message board at the entrance notifying people of when the meeting's going to be held, the digital board?
The digital board, I would have to coordinate that with the Department of Public Works because they usually handle that process.
It
But
seems like that'd be the easiest way to go about it, and everybody would be sure to see it. And if it was right there in the Cabana room, it'd be easy for them to just go in there and meet with the applicant and or a city staff person and go over all of their questions that way.
are you saying the sign should be inside the Cabana room or a sign should be outside the Cabana?
At the end of Greenview, Clubhouse.
The entrance somewhere.
I know what he's talking about. I'm just confirming.
They've got two sides.
Yeah. I don't have a problem with that, but like I said, that would have to be coordinated with the Department of Public Works just to ensure that that's okay.
But I don't
Councilman
think that
Smalls,
should
do
be
you
the
like
only
that?
way that notice goes out. I mean, that can be a supporting way, but I think sending something out in the mail should also be used. So, as many methods as we can use to get that information to the residents in the community should be explored.
I definitely don't have a problem with that. And also, if the residents that are here, if they know residents that are not here, if they want to provide email addresses, we can send out emails as well.
Oh,
text messages.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think mail would be a good way to notify, and also the public signs. And I agree, not certified mail. It's difficult to to go to the post office and work full time. Thank you.
Okay. Is there anyone else wishing to speak? Yes, sir.
Yes, my name is Glenn Olson. I live at 14223 Greenview Drive. I spoke last night about some of these issues with the traffic in the townhouses. As it appears now, it looks like from what we've seen in the plans, the pictures, the front of the townhouses will be on the roads, and we'll look at the alleyways of the townhouses in Section B. But what I wanted to talk about, especially tonight, is to ask if the developer, their land adjoins 2 tracts belonging to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and if they've talked to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service about the impacts on the refuge, but also floodplains are floodplains. Revising maps to make the variance go away by 2 feet or something isn't going to change things. When I bought my house, it's on a natural levee of the Patuxent River. I recognize that. I have flood insurance. I pay for flood insurance because I chose to live there. Making the floodplain rules different so your residents in the new subdivision don't have to pay for flood insurance is going to be wrong. Where is the developer going to be in 5 or 10 years when that flood occurs and all those houses are flooded? Who's going to pay for it then? They're going to be, all those poor people are going to be out. This is totally wrong to be building on floodplains, building major developments on floodplains. I guess my last comment would be the golf course has a license to grow grass. We've seen from some of the other speakers here the approval of the medical marijuana community. Maybe what they should do is consider growing marijuana grass.
It must be more lucrative.
Nobody wanted the solar fields there.
No.
We didn't either. Oh, no. We that's what I said. Oh, maybe that's where some of you saw us before. We were very active in that. Okay. Is there anyone else from the public wishing to speak? I know that the applicant has asked for a less than 2-minute summary. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, everybody, for your patience and your time tonight, and I'm happy that everybody was given a chance to speak. I do want to say we are not proposing to build on the floodplain. We would be revising the floodplain by grading the land out of the floodplain, and that would be closely and thoroughly reviewed. I'm not going to go over that again, and it would be further reviewed at later stages as well. I do want to say that we first contacted the Civic Association based on input from staff before we filed the application. We reached out to the contact we had, which was for the condo association. We managed, after getting schedules back and forth, we got a meeting set up on September 20th and met with them. We were informed at that time that there were actually 2 associations and asked for a contact for the single family, and we reached out to them. So on September 20th, we met with that group for the condos, villages. We did not file until October 30th, but we met with them before we filed. We asked for a meeting with the single families, and we got that together by December 4th, just going back and forth on schedules. And we appreciate their time, and it was a constructive meeting. And then also when we filed the application, we got the mailing list from the staff, and we mailed out the 278 certified mail notices.
Oh, so you did do a mailing.
As required by your ordinance, which made the, I'm understanding that the local postman was very unhappy with all those certified mails, but that's what we're required to do by statute, and we did that. We are very much committed to continuing to dialogue with the community. We agree with some of the statements that have been made. This is a first step, and we would ask to be able to continue to go forward. None of the specific proposals of units and layout and where they are and what the buffer is being approved by either your action or City Council's action. It merely allows us to come back and make a specific proposal for this property, which would include more information on engineering and more information on traffic and all of the issues that were brought up. And in fact, it will facilitate that dialogue proceeding, and we would initiate that before we file the next round of applications. Thank you.
Tell me if this was our longest meeting ever.
No.
Oh, okay.
No, you're not even close yet.
If there are no, are there any questions for staff or any further final comments?
I just want to make sure that the Christian puts down that Rick and I get overtime for tonight.
1.5 times.
So if I could.
Mr. Wilson.
I appreciate, all the input from the community and Mr. Denoga's expertise on this, and Mr. Epps. I know you guys have thought about this long and hard. Here's where I am as a commissioner, one commissioner. We're being asked to, and I'll take, Tom, I appreciate that this is, it is a rezoning, but it in effect was already rezoned back in the 80s when this PUD went through. The way I look at it is we're never going to get to the part of this that everybody wants to get to, which is what are we going to put there? How are we going to get FEMA to go along with it or not? If FEMA's going to change the rules to 500-year floods or 250-year floods, I don't think we can address that here. And to continue to, I think in my way of looking at this, we need to move ahead, or at least suggest to the city council that they consider moving ahead. We're not the final arbitrator here. So where I'm coming down is unless we go to this step, we're never going to get to the step where we decide everything. I don't think anybody here was saying, let's leave this land empty. I don't know, maybe Mr. Denoga was. Okay. I don't think that's going to happen.
The HOA buys it.
Oh, yeah. But I think we do need to get to the point where the developer can at least put their heads together with the community and with all of the governmental entities that they're going to have to contend with to get this. Whatever the rules are going to be, the rules are going to be. Whether it's 500-year or 250-year or 100-year, I don't know, and I think that all needs to be taken care of. I think we've all talked, and I didn't watch the other two meetings on purpose. I like to come in front of these and get what's in front of me. But I think we've all discussed the traffic issues here. I think they're going to be quite challenging, even if we put in a second road in, because that really doesn't fix that left-hand turn. And part of that is just that section of 197, with it being so many lanes wide. I think people tend to go, I know I do. I fly down that sucker heading to the parkway like everybody else. And maybe there's some things we can do as a city to do some traffic slowing on there, although it's not our road. I guess it's State Highways Road, but whatever we could do there to slow folks down, it's a challenge. And I know, I grew up in northeastern Ohio, and when I moved to Maryland, I didn't realize that nobody here has a working turn signal. So I never saw one used here in Maryland. So that was kind of new to me. We used our turn signals in Ohio. So anyhow, that's where I am. I think unless we move this forward, we're never going to get to the meat of the discussion. So that's where I am. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any other comments? If not, I will entertain a motion.
Let me give it a try. I recommend approval of Resolution 1716 PC for the Planning Commission to recommend approval to the Mayor and City Council for map amendment application number 880 to amend the approved PUD plan for Patuxent Greens Golf Course with the outlined conditions of the staff to include another just normal mailing, not certified mail, to the greatest extent possible, putting up the digital boards, and to have a serious consideration to ask the City Council to delay their taking up this matter until after suitable input from the community.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
We have a motion from Mr. Wilson and a second from Mr. Kish. Ms. Quillen, would you please?
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Kish?
Yes.
Mr. Welford?
Yes.
Chairwoman Bettman?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. And I, too, would like to thank all of you. This has been a long meeting, and there will be many, many more times for input and all of that. This is our last agenda item before I adjourn, so if you would like, we can get some sheets of paper out, and so that people can write names and emails and phone numbers. But we do pride ourselves in process and communication and transparency, and we appreciate your engagement. So with that, this meeting is adjourned.
I have one
Excuse
comment
me.
I'd just like to
Commissioner
stress
Smalls?
and make sure everyone is aware.
Commissioner, Council. Hold,
The city
please.
council is committed, and we stated this at the first time this application was before us, to work and seriously work with the community. I think that's been demonstrated by comments from the council members. Certainly, Councilman DeWalt's impassioned comments at a recent council meeting stressed the need for the applicant to be open, to be honest, and transparent to everyone that's has an interest in this project. So we're looking to kick this can down the road for quite some time, and your input in this whole project is extremely important. Extremely important. Again, as stated, I haven't heard anyone who is vehemently opposed. I saw some hands go up to leave it as it is. But I think with dialogue, with open and honest dialogue coming from the applicant and his team, open and honest dialogue coming from the community, I think that we'll get to a point where the majority of us will be happy and pleased with whatever the outcome is.
Thank you, Councilmember Smalls. With that, the meeting is adjourned.